Section 1. The Impossible Geography of Springfield. There is a town somewhere in America. It has a nuclear power plant on the hill and a harbor at the bottom. It has mountains you can drive to in the afternoon and a desert that begins somewhere past the edge of the suburbs. It has a gorge deep enough to swallow a school bus, a forest old enough to have legends attached to it, and a river that runs alongside the main road, green and slow and full of fish that nobody fully trusts anymore. It has every season, sometimes in the same week. The town has a name: Springfield. And if you have spent any portion of your life watching a certain animated family stumble through their evenings together, you already know this place. You know the yellow glow of the living room window. You know the blue of Marge's impossible hair rising above the roofline. You know the low hum of the power plant cooling towers and the way the smoke drifts across the sky in the opening credits, casual as a sigh, as if nothing about any of this requires explanation. Tonight, you are going to rest. You are going to let the details of Springfield wash over you slowly, the way a river covers the stones on its bed, not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually, patiently, until everything underneath is smooth and quiet and still. There is no urgency here. Nothing needs to be solved before you sleep. These are stories you already know, told gently and at length, and the whole point is that you let them carry you somewhere comfortable before they let you go. So, Springfield. The geography of it is the first thing that breaks, if you look long enough. Most towns in America have a shape you can trace. They exist in a particular climate. They have a particular relationship with the landscape around them. A town in Ohio has certain skies, certain trees, certain winters. A town in Oregon has the particular green of the Pacific Northwest and the smell of rain that doesn't quite leave. A town on the Gulf Coast has heat and humidity and a flatness to the horizon that towns in mountain country never have. Springfield has all of these things, simultaneously, seemingly without contradiction, as if the world decided that one piece of American real estate could hold every American landscape at once. In the early seasons, the town sits in what feels like the Midwest. The skies have that particular gray-white quality of a place that knows what winter means. The houses have basements, which is a feature of geography. Basements exist in places where the ground freezes deep enough that you have to dig below the frost line to lay a foundation. The trees are the kind that lose their leaves. The streets have a flatness to them that suggests you are nowhere near a coast. And then something shifts. A later episode shows the town from the water, a real harbor, boats and everything, the kind of working waterfront that belongs to a coastal city. Another episode places Springfield near enough to a mountain range that the Simpsons can drive up into snow and ski on a Saturday. An episode that focuses on the geography of the surrounding region shows a desert beginning just past the city limits, scrubby and dry, and entirely unlike anything that belongs near mountains cold enough for skiing. Springfield has been placed, across its run, in or near the following states: Ohio, Oregon, Nevada, Kentucky, Maine, Illinois, and a fictional state designated NT, which does not correspond to any real American geography. The show has offered clues that point in contradictory directions, and every time a fan believes they have assembled enough evidence to make a final determination, another episode arrives and quietly dissolves it. Matt Groening, the man who created Springfield, admitted in 2012 that he named the town after Springfield, Oregon. He grew up near it. He liked the name because it was common, because it belonged to dozens of places at once and therefore belonged to nowhere specific. The admission made headlines. For approximately 2 days, the internet considered the matter settled. Then the show continued to contradict itself, and the matter became unsettled again. The writers did not honor the confession. Episodes continued to place Springfield in contexts that made Oregon impossible. The geography kept shifting. The landscape kept swallowing its own tracks. And the strange thing, the thing worth settling into as you close your eyes, is that this geographic impossibility is one of the most thoughtful things about the show. It was not carelessness, it was not laziness, it was a decision, made early and maintained consistently, that Springfield would be the town that every American could recognize as their own. To fix it in Oregon would be to lose it for everyone who grew up somewhere else. To give it a precise climate would be to narrow it, to make it specific in a way that would make it foreign to a viewer in Texas or Vermont or the middle of Montana. Springfield was built to feel like everywhere, and the only way to feel like everywhere is to actually be nowhere. Think about the drive into town. In the opening credits, the camera moves across the sky and dips down over a hill, and there it is, the power plant first. Always the power plant first. The cooling towers sending their plumes up into the sky, and then the road descending into town, and the buildings arranging themselves in the comfortable familiarity of a place you have known for 36 years. There is something in that approach that triggers recognition before memory. You do not remember the first time you saw it. You simply feel as though you have always known it was there. The town's layout is similarly generous with its inconsistencies. The school sits in one position relative to the Simpson house in most episodes, but the distance between them shifts depending on what the story requires. Moe's Tavern is sometimes a short walk from the house and sometimes a drive. The nuclear power plant, which should be fixed in the landscape as firmly as any large industrial structure, occasionally appears to be just over the hill and occasionally seems to be on the far side of town, visible on the horizon but not close enough to walk to. The Springfield Gorge sits somewhere outside of town, a great gaping crack in the earth that has swallowed Homer at least once, but its exact position relative to the rest of the geography is elastic. It is wherever the story needs it to be. Far enough to be a destination, close enough to be reached in a single act of escalating stupidity. There is a mountain. There is a volcano, referenced occasionally and treated with the same casual acceptance that Springfield residents bring to everything that should alarm them. There is a forest. There is a quarry. There is a beach, or something close enough to a beach that the characters treat it as one. A real town this size would be one of those things. It would sit in one climate, one geological formation, one relationship with the surrounding terrain. Springfield is all terrain simultaneously, as if it exists at the point where all American landscapes overlap, a kind of geographic average that produces every feature at once. Which brings us to the weather. Springfield has experienced blizzards. It has experienced heat waves. It has experienced the particular gray drizzle of a Pacific Northwestern autumn and the punishing summer humidity of the American South. It has had tornadoes and floods and at least one incident involving weather so strange that it bent the laws of meteorology in ways that the episode did not pause to explain. The weather in Springfield is, like the geography, everywhere at once. It serves the story. It reflects the emotional tone of whatever the characters are moving through. A bleak episode gets bleak skies. A warm, sentimental moment gets the particular golden light of a late afternoon in a place where late afternoons are gentle and long. This responsiveness is part of what makes Springfield feel real in the way that no real town does. Real towns have weather that is indifferent to the people living in them. The rain falls on your grief and on your joy with equal persistence. The sun does not come out because you needed it to. The landscape does not arrange itself to underline your feelings. Springfield's landscape does all of those things. And somehow, over decades of watching it do exactly that, viewers stopped noticing. The geography stopped being strange because it stopped being geography and became atmosphere. Springfield doesn't have a location. It has a mood. And the mood is the particular kind of American life that feels familiar from the inside, messy and warm and perpetually slightly stuck, the feeling of a place you know so well you stopped seeing it. The harbor exists because American towns often have harbors, and Springfield is every American town. The mountains exist because some viewers grew up with mountains, and Springfield is their town too. The desert exists, the gorge exists, the forest exists, the quarry exists, the tire fire that has been burning for years at the edge of town exists. All of it exists, because none of it is geography in the real sense. It is symbolic. It is emotional. It is a stage set built to hold every version of American domestic life simultaneously, and the impossibility of the landscape is the price of that ambition. You will notice, as you drift, that the show never draws attention to any of this. No character in Springfield has ever looked at the mountains and the harbor and the desert and said anything about the peculiarity of their situation. No visiting geographer has ever puzzled over the impossible arrangement of terrain features. No weather forecaster has ever paused in the middle of a broadcast to note that the town's climate does not correspond to any known meteorological region. They simply live there. They have always simply lived there. The impossible geography is as invisible to them as their yellow skin, as unquestioned as the fact that the town's economy is built around a nuclear plant that should, by any reasonable assessment, have been shut down and sealed off decades ago. Springfield residents do not question their landscape. They do not question anything about the physical world they inhabit, not the mutations, not the three-eyed fish, not the gorge that opens up just past the highway, not the desert that begins where the suburbs end. It is all simply home. It is all simply the way things are. And there is something in that something worth sitting with as you settle deeper into the night, something in the image of a town full of people who have completely stopped questioning the shape of the world they live in, who have been so thoroughly habituated to the impossible that the impossible has become comfortable, who wake up every morning under skies that shift from gray to tropical without explanation, and who put on their clothes and make their coffee and go to work and do not once look at the landscape and wonder. The town is a kind of dream logic, and dream logic, once accepted, is the most natural thing in the world. There is a scene early in the series where Homer drives to work. The camera follows his car along a road that winds past familiar landmarks, a convenience store, a church, a vacant lot with something in it that nobody mentions, and then up the hill toward the plant. And the road curves just so, and the cooling towers come into view, and Homer sees them every morning the way you see the particular corner of ceiling above your bed, without seeing them at all, without processing them as strange or significant or worth remarking on. He has driven this road so many times that the road has become part of him. The landscape is his body. He does not experience it. He merely moves through it, as the blood moves through the veins without the body being aware of it. This is what habituation does to a place. Springfield is 36 years old now. It has been the same town for all of that time, shifting its geography quietly between episodes, rearranging its distances and its weather and its relationship to the surrounding terrain, but always returning to that essential feeling: the yellow light, the blue hair rising above the roofline, the low groan of the power plant, the particular quality of evening on Evergreen Terrace. If you have been watching since childhood, Springfield is almost certainly more vivid to you than most real places you have visited. You can navigate its streets without a map. You know which diner is on which corner. You know the walk from the house to Moe's, the drive from the house to the plant, the school bus route, the path Homer takes when he cuts through the neighbor's yard. This is more familiarity than most people have with the geography of towns they have actually lived in, which means Springfield has done something extraordinary. It has become a real place in the only sense that matters, the sense in which a place lives in the mind of the person who knows it. It does not exist on any map because it does not need to. It exists in the accumulated memory of everyone who has ever watched the opening credits and felt something click into place, some recognition that precedes thought, some homecoming that requires no explanation. There is a Springfield in your memory. It is different from every other person's Springfield, slightly, because each viewer brings their own geography to it, maps their own childhood landscape onto its hills and streets. But it is yours. It has always been yours. And tonight, it is a place to rest. The gorge is out there in the dark, deep, and still. The harbor is quiet, the boats rocking gently. The desert begins somewhere past the edge of the suburbs, cool now in the night, the sand having released the day's heat into a sky full of stars. The mountain is a dark shape against the horizon. The forest breathes. Somewhere on the hill, the cooling towers hum. The river moves, the town sleeps. If you are watching this late at night, drop your time and location in the comments. It is always interesting to see where these videos reach. And if this is the kind of content you want more of, subscribing means you will be there when the next one arrives. Section 2. The power plant and the town it poisoned. The Springfield nuclear power plant sits on a hill above the town. It has always sat on that hill. It sat there before Homer worked there, before any of the Simpsons lived in their house on Evergreen Terrace, before the town was fully built up around it. The hill and the cooling towers are the first thing you see when you approach from the main road. They are the last thing visible when the sun goes down and the lights inside come on and the towers glow faintly against the dark. The plant is, by any technical or regulatory standard that has ever been applied to it, an active disaster. This is not a theory. It is stated plainly, repeatedly, across decades of episodes, dropped into the narrative the way you drop a stone into a pond, the stone sinks, the ripples spread, and then the water goes still again and nobody mentions the stone. The inspection that found 342 violations, that number, 342 individual failures of safety, protocol, or basic structural integrity, discovered in a single assessment of a facility that remains operational for the entirety of the show's run. The cost to bring the plant into compliance was estimated at $56 million. The owner declined to spend it. He declined not because the money was beyond him. Charles Montgomery Burns is, by any measure applied within the show's universe, a man for whom $56 million is an inconvenience budget. He declined because spending the money would require acknowledging that the problems existed. And acknowledging the problems would require answering questions about what those problems had already done to the water, to the soil, to the people living in the town below. The violations that the inspection found were not paperwork failures. They were physical, structural, chemical, radioactive waste disposed of directly into the waterways surrounding the plant. Radioactive waste left on the grounds of the elementary school, the school where the children of Springfield spent their days. Plutonium used as a paperweight, sitting on someone's desk, heavy and unremarked upon, next to the stapler and the coffee mug. Cooling towers with cracks patched using chewing gum. Not metaphorically, literally. The structural integrity of a nuclear reactor's cooling system maintained by the same material a child sticks to the underside of a school desk. Rats in the facility's lower levels. But not ordinary rats. The show describes them as luminous. Glowing rats moving through the dark corridors of the plant's basement, visible in the absence of any other light source because something in their bodies has been altered by proximity to what the plant contains. And then, in the basement, skeletons. Human skeletons. The show mentions this and moves on. It does not explain who those people were. It does not explain how they came to be there. The bones of human beings are discovered in the basement of an operational nuclear power plant in the middle of a populated town, and the discovery generates no investigation, no news coverage, no municipal response. The inspection notes it. The inspection notes everything. And the inspection results in no closure of the facility, no criminal inquiry, no follow-up of any kind. The skeletons are in the basement. The rats glow. The cooling towers are sealed with gum. And every morning the workers arrive, badge through the security gate, change into their work clothes, and go to their stations. Homer Simpson goes to Sector 7G. Homer Simpson's job, the job he has held for the entirety of the show's run, is safety inspector. His function, the purpose he serves within the operational structure of the plant, is to be the person standing between the facility and the kind of catastrophic failure that would require the word incident in a federal report. He is the person whose attentiveness is supposed to be the last defense between the reactor and the town. The show's creator has said that Homer has an IQ of 55. In the episode where a crayon lodged in Homer's brain since childhood is removed by a doctor, his intelligence rises dramatically. He becomes articulate, curious, capable of following complex arguments and constructing his own. When the crayon is in place, these capacities are suppressed, not absent. The intelligence exists. It simply cannot be accessed. A crayon, in the brain, since childhood. Missed by every medical professional in Springfield who ever examined him. Sitting in the neural tissue, pressing against whatever structures are responsible for the things we call thinking. The town's safety depends on the man with a crayon in his brain. The man who, in one episode, throws a donut into the reactor core to see what happens to it. The man who, in another, falls asleep at his workstation and is jolted awake by a meltdown alarm, and, in the process of silencing the alarm, triggers a secondary alert. The man whose relationship with the instruments he monitors is one of mutual incomprehension. He does not understand what they are telling him, and they do not understand that anyone is supposed to be listening. Homer's continued employment at the plant is not the simple result of institutional inertia of a large organization failing to notice that one of its employees is an ongoing hazard. It is specific. When German investors briefly bought the plant from Burns and assessed its situation, the first thing they did was review the staff. Homer was let go within the week, not because they had any particular animus toward him, but because a competent safety inspector would see the 342 violations and begin asking questions that no one in the facility's management could answer comfortably. Burns bought the plant back. Homer was rehired. A document exists within the show's universe that functions as an implicit contract. Burns and Homer's father reached an agreement. Homer would be guaranteed employment at the plant regardless of his performance. The details of why this agreement was struck are explored later in the show's history, but the fact of it gives Homer's job security a different character. He is not employed because he is competent. He is employed because his employment serves a function that has nothing to do with the plant's safety and everything to do with its continued operation. A safety inspector who doesn't inspect. A defender of the public who cannot process what the instruments in front of him are saying. A human shield positioned between the reactor and accountability, present enough to satisfy a regulatory checkbox, absent enough to ensure that the checkbox is the only thing that gets satisfied. Think about what 342 violations means in a physical sense. Each violation is a place where something that should be sealed is open, or something that should be contained is loose, or something that should be monitored is ignored, or something that should be repaired has been allowed to deteriorate past the point where ordinary maintenance could address it. Each violation is a point at which whatever is inside the plant makes contact with the world outside. The plant operates continuously. It runs through every episode, every season, every year. The violations are not fixed. They are not addressed. The chewing gum on the cooling tower cracks either stays there, degrading slowly as chewing gum does, or it falls away and the crack is simply open to whatever needs to move through it. The waste dumped into the waterways does not undump itself. The plutonium on the desk continues to sit there, warm and patient. And the water that flows out of Springfield, the water that moves downstream from the plant's waste disposal sites, the water that fills the river and feeds the municipal supply and runs into the harbor, that water has been receiving the plant's output for as long as the plant has been running. Blinky. The three-eyed fish is the show's clearest statement on what the plant has done to the environment around it. Blinky is caught in the river near the plant in Season 2. A third eye, fully formed, functional as far as the show suggests, positioned between the other two. A mutation produced by proximity to the facility's runoff, as visible a consequence as anything the show could have chosen to display. The episode that features Blinky turns him into a political issue. A candidate for governor uses the fish as evidence of environmental contamination. Burns, facing the implication that the fish demonstrates his plant is poisoning the surrounding area, responds by eating the fish on live television. The message is clear. There is nothing wrong here. The fish is fine. Everything is fine. The town watches and decides to believe him, not because the evidence is ambiguous. The evidence is a three-eyed fish. The evidence is about as unambiguous as evidence gets. The town watches Burns eat the fish and chooses, collectively, to accept the performance over the reality. The candidate loses. Burns wins. The river continues to receive whatever the plant sends it. But here is what Blinky means, in the quieter sense. If the fish have three eyes, the question that nobody in Springfield asks is what has happened to the people drinking the water. The fish are in the water. The people drink the water. The mutation visible in the fish is the product of what the water contains. This is a chain of inference so simple that it requires no expertise to follow, no advanced degree in environmental science or biology. If the fish are different because of what is in the water, and the people drink the water, then the people are also different because of what is in the water. The show does not make this argument out loud. It makes it in images. Every resident of Springfield is drawn with 4 fingers, bulging eyes, overbites, hair that behaves in ways real hair does not, yellow skin, not the yellow of jaundice, not the yellow of any human condition that a doctor would recognize, but a flat, saturated yellow that belongs to no natural human variation. And when characters from outside Springfield visit celebrities, government officials, people who have not grown up in the town, who have not been drinking the water or breathing the air, they look different. Not subtly different, but structurally different. Their proportions are more natural. Their eyes are set more normally in their faces. Their features suggest a human anatomy closer to the one that exists outside of animation. The official explanation, the one that requires no investigation, is that this is simply the art style. The Simpsons looks the way it looks, and the visitors look different because they are drawn with more realistic proportion as a visual joke, as a way of marking them as outsiders. But inside the logic of the show's own world, something else is visible. The people of Springfield look the way they look. The people who come from outside Springfield look different. The people inside the contamination zone look one way. The people outside it look another. You can see the boundary of the affected area in the faces of the characters. Blinky is in the water. The water reaches the people. The people look like Blinky. The plant has been doing this for the entirety of the show's history. Not as a dramatic plot point, not as a storyline that builds toward a confrontation and a resolution, as background, as the permanent hum beneath everything, the low vibration of the cooling towers that everyone in Springfield has learned to stop hearing. At night, the plant is lit. The towers are always lit. There is always something moving inside, always something processing, always some reaction sustaining itself in the facility's deep interior, measured by instruments that Homer is not watching, monitored by safeguards that Homer cannot interpret, maintained by the infrastructure of a building whose violations have been accumulating for decades without correction. The light from the plant falls on the town. It falls on the Simpson house, on the house next door, on the houses down the street and around the corner and all the way to the edge of Springfield's imprecise geography. It falls on the river and the harbor and the school and the retirement home. It falls on Moe's Tavern and the Quickie Mart and the church and the town square. It falls on the cemetery where the headstones stand. The town sleeps under the plant's light, has always slept under it, will always sleep under it, as long as the plant runs and Burns lives and Homer keeps his job and nobody asks about the skeletons in the basement. The Simpsons movie took the premise further than any episode had. The Environmental Protection Agency, presented in the film as a real federal agency operating within the show's universe, determines that Springfield's contamination has reached a level at which the town itself constitutes a hazard to the surrounding region. The solution they implement is a glass dome. The entire town is sealed under a physical barrier, a hermetic containment, designed to prevent Springfield's pollution from escaping to the rest of the country. Think about what that means at its most basic level. The United States government, in the show's own fiction, looked at Springfield and concluded that the only way to protect the surrounding nation from what Springfield has become was to seal it away, not to clean it up, not to address the source of the contamination, to seal it, to put a wall around it and tell everyone inside it that this is now where they live. And the people of Springfield, the people who have been living inside this contamination for generations, are still inside the dome when it goes up. They are sealed in with everything the plant has produced. The dome does not protect them. The dome protects everyone else from them. Springfield is not a polluted town with a pollution problem. Springfield is classified, in the logic of its own story, as a contained environmental hazard, a place too far gone for remediation, a town that the rest of the country needs to be protected from. And by the next episode, the dome is gone. Springfield is open again. The plant is running. Homer is at his workstation. The violations remain. The gum is on the cooling tower. The rats glow. Nothing changes in Springfield. That is not a flaw of the writing. It is the point. Section 3. Mr. Burns and the Architecture of Control. Charles Montgomery Burns does not look like a man who has been alive for over a century. He looks like something that has survived long past the point where survival was supposed to be possible, something that has outlasted every biological process that should have concluded it. He is thin in the way that only extreme age can make a person thin, the fat and muscle long gone, the flesh drawn close against the structure beneath. He walks with a forward lean that suggests his body is perpetually in the process of folding. He moves slowly, carefully, with the precision of someone who has learned to husband every unit of energy because there is no certainty about when the next unit will be available. But his eyes are sharp. This is the detail that matters. Whatever the body has conceded to time, the eyes remain. The mind behind them works. It works with a strategic clarity that cuts through every scene he occupies, identifying what is useful and what is not, calculating advantage with a fluency that suggests decades of practice, of refinement, of the particular intelligence that is produced when a person has had a very long time to understand how power is acquired and how it is kept. Burns has been alive, by the show's most conservative accounting, since the late 19th century. His memories, referenced across dozens of episodes, stretch back past events that concluded before most of the show's audience was born. He speaks of historical moments not as history but as experience. The Gilded Age is not a period he read about. It is a period he lived through, a period in which his family was already wealthy and already accumulating. The Burns dynasty extends back further than the show ever fully traces. What the show does establish is that by the time Charles Montgomery Burns arrived to inherit it, the wealth was already ancient, already institutional, Already the kind of wealth that does not depend on the fortune of any single generation, because it has been structured to survive the death of any individual and transfer itself forward intact. Burns did not build an empire. He inherited one, and then he spent a century extending it. The nuclear power plant is the most visible expression of that extension. Burns moved into the energy infrastructure of Springfield at a point when the town was dependent on electrical power and had no other source of it. He built the plant or oversaw its construction. The show is not precise about this, and in doing so became the town's only supplier of the thing that modern life requires above almost everything else. You can live without many things. You cannot run a hospital without electricity. You cannot run a school or a business or a home, in the modern sense, without it. Burns became, through the plant, the invisible architecture of Springfield's existence. Every building that is lit, every refrigerator that runs, every pump that moves the water through the pipes, every heating system that keeps a family from freezing in winter, all of it draws from a source that Burns controls. The town does not own its own power supply. It leases it, permanently, from a man whose interest in the town's welfare is entirely secondary to his interest in the town's continued dependency. This is a different kind of power from the kind that announces itself. Burns does not govern Springfield. He does not sit on the city council or hold any public office. He is, officially, a private citizen who owns a business. His relationship to the town is commercial. He provides a service and the town pays for it. But the relationship between a town and its sole energy supplier is not really commercial in any ordinary sense. It is structural. Burns is built into Springfield the way a foundation is built into a house. The house does not choose the foundation. The house simply rests on it, and everything the house is follows from what the foundation can support. And if the foundation ever chooses to withdraw its support, everything above it discovers very quickly how contingent its existence was. Burns has never needed to govern Springfield. He governs it anyway, through the simple fact of his indispensability. The medical situation is the other element that the show returns to across its run. The piece of Burns's existence that sits in the background of every scene, unaddressed but palpable, the cost he pays to go on living. In the Springfield Files, the episode where Homer encounters what he takes to be an alien in the woods outside town, the reveal is that the figure he has been pursuing is Burns, returning from one of his weekly treatments. The treatments are extreme enough that they cause his body to emit a visible green glow. They are administered on a precise schedule. Miss One and Burns does not simply deteriorate, he dies. The window between treatments and death is described as a single week. This is not a sustainable life in any ordinary sense. It is a managed existence, a set of biological circumstances held in place through constant intervention, through a protocol that must be followed without exception because there is no tolerance for error. Burns has not outlived his biology. He has arrested it, chemically and radiologically, in a state of perpetual stasis, paying the price of that stasis in weekly treatments that leave him glowing and dazed in the woods outside the facility where his own workers spend their days. The body that emerges from those treatments is not a healthy body. It is a maintained one, the way a very old building can be maintained past its structural lifespan through constant reinforcement, constant monitoring, constant intervention. You do not return it to what it was. You simply prevent it from becoming rubble. Burns has every disease known to medicine. This is not hyperbole. The show states it explicitly. A doctor's examination reveals that every known illness is present in Burns's body simultaneously. The doctor's explanation is that the illnesses are in a state of equilibrium, each preventing the others from advancing to the point where any single one could kill him. Three Stooges syndrome, the doctor calls it, a collision of pathologies so complete that none of them can move. The comedy of this diagnosis does not erase its implications. A man is carrying every disease at once, kept alive not by health but by the gridlock of his own illnesses. The balance is maintained by the weekly treatments. The treatments are managing not a disease but a biological ecosystem, keeping every pathogen and every dysfunction in a precise relationship with every other, a relationship that sustains life through its very impossibility. Waylon Smithers, Burns's assistant, is the person who keeps this system running, not in the sense of administering the treatments himself, though he may do that too. In the logistical sense, Smithers maintains Burns's schedule. Smithers monitors Burns's condition with the sustained attention of someone who understands that a lapse in monitoring is a lapse in the conditions that keep Burns alive. Smithers knows where Burns is supposed to be every hour of every week, and he knows what happens if Burns is somewhere else. The devotion Smithers shows to Burns is one of the show's central comedic and emotional relationships. It is played for humor, for pathos, for the particular discomfort of watching someone subordinate their entire life to the service of a person who barely registers their existence. But underneath the comedy, there is a structural reality. Smithers is not optional. Smithers is the human infrastructure that keeps the biological infrastructure functioning. Without Smithers, Burns misses a treatment. Burns misses a treatment, and the equilibrium breaks, and the diseases that have been held in perfect gridlock surge forward. And Burns dies, not eventually, within a week. Smithers is keeping Burns alive through the ordinary act of scheduling, of remembering, of being present and attentive in ways that Burns cannot be for himself. This dynamic explains something about the loyalty in the other direction. Burns is not warm toward Smithers. Burns is not warm toward anyone. But he has never replaced Smithers, has never pushed him away permanently despite dozens of opportunities, has never done the thing that his personality would otherwise suggest. Because replacing Smithers would mean training a new person in a protocol that cannot afford to be misunderstood. It would mean introducing uncertainty into a system that has no room for it. Burns keeps Smithers for the same reason the plant keeps Homer, not out of sentiment, out of necessity. Now, there is a question the show circles without ever directly answering, which is whether Burns's longevity is unique or whether it represents a pattern in his family. The Burns dynasty is ancient by American standards. The wealth has been in continuous operation for longer than most American institutions have existed. That kind of continuity across generations requires either extraordinary successional planning or something more personal, the same individual holding the reins across a much longer arc than a normal human lifespan would allow. The show does not confirm that previous Burns patriarchs lived unnaturally long lives, but it does establish that the current one has, and it does establish that the resources required to extend a life in this way, the medical infrastructure, the pharmaceutical access, the financial capacity to develop and sustain a weekly treatment protocol indefinitely, are the precise resources that a dynasty of this kind would accumulate over centuries. The question of who Burns is, in the deepest sense, is also the question of how he has survived. He is not simply a wealthy man who happens to be very old. He is a man who decided at some point that the normal conclusion of a human life was not applicable to him, and who then proceeded to apply every resource at his disposal toward making that decision stick. The treatments are the current expression of that decision. They may not be the first. Everything Burns has built: the plant, the monopoly on Springfield's power supply, the political influence, the medical infrastructure. The deal with Homer's father that guarantees the plant's safety oversight remains theoretical. It all serves one purpose. It keeps Burns alive. It keeps the treatments coming. It keeps the diseases balanced. It keeps the reactor running and the money moving, and the people of Springfield dependent on a supply of electricity that he controls, and they cannot live without. Burns's empire is not primarily about wealth. Wealth is a means. The end is continuity. The end is the ability to wake up next week, and the week after that, and the week after that, and go on operating, go on building, go on accumulating the kind of influence that makes you, eventually, the kind of force that a town cannot afford to challenge, because challenging you would cost the town everything it runs on. There is a scene in an early episode where Burns stands at a window above Springfield and surveys the town below him. The scene is played for comedy, Burns being sinister, Burns narrating his own villainy in the way that cartoons allow. But the image is accurate. He does stand above the town. He has always stood above it. The plant is on the hill and Burns is in the plant, and the town is below, and the relationship between them is not the relationship of a business and its customers. It is the relationship of something older and more fundamental, the feudal lord and the village, the dam and the valley it could flood, the source and everything downstream. Burns does not hate Springfield. Hatred would require the town to matter to him in a personal way. Springfield is infrastructure. It is the collection of lives and dependencies that make the plant viable, the consumer base that turns electricity into revenue, The community of people whose ongoing existence in the town ensures that the plant continues to have a reason to run, and Burns continues to have a reason to stay in it. He does not want the town to suffer. Suffering is bad for business. He wants the town to persist. To persist and to remain exactly as dependent on him as it currently is. To never develop an alternative energy source. Never organize in opposition to him. Never produce the kind of civic clarity that might lead its residents to look at the three-eyed fish and the glowing rats and the skeletons in the basement and conclude that the cost of the electricity is too high. The crayon in Homer's brain. The show presents this as a childhood accident, a random object that found its way into the wrong place. But the image of a device of suppression, lodged in the brain of the man who is supposed to be the plant's safety inspector, maintained in place by a medical establishment that would have caught it if they were looking. That image resonates differently once you understand what Burns needs Homer to be. Homer with the crayon is compliant. Homer with the crayon cannot think critically about the situation he is in. Homer with the crayon shows up every morning and sits at his station and does not look at the instruments and does not understand that the things those instruments are saying should concern him. Homer without the crayon looks at Springfield and sees it clearly. Homer without the crayon is miserable, because seeing Springfield clearly is a miserable experience. He has the crayon put back in. Burns did not put the crayon there, but Burns benefits from it being there. And the medical establishment that failed to find it, in a town that Burns's money sustains and his influence shapes, did not find it because failing to find things is one of the services that money can purchase. The town sleeps and the plant hums, and Burns exists in his weekly cycle of treatment and recovery, glowing faintly in the woods between one dose and the next, ancient and sustained and entirely, absolutely in control. He has been in control since before anyone currently alive in Springfield was born. He will be in control after them, if the treatments hold, if the money continues to flow, if Smithers continues to remember the schedule. Springfield is not the show's setting. Burns is. The town arranges itself around him the way a landscape arranges itself around the thing that shapes it. The hill exists to hold the plant. The plant exists to produce the electricity. The electricity exists to give the town something to be dependent on. The dependence exists to give Burns something to be needed for, and the need is what keeps him alive. He is too expensive to die, and Springfield will keep paying. Section 4. Homer Simpson and the Weight of Being Who You Are. Homer J. Simpson is 39 years old. He has been 39 years old for 36 years. He will be 39 years old for as long as the show runs, for as long as there are viewers who want to come back to Evergreen Terrace and find things the way they left them. This is a fact of the show's structure, the floating timeline that preserves the characters at the age they occupied when the series began, and it is also, if you look at it from a certain angle, one of the saddest facts about Homer specifically. 39 is a particular kind of age. It is the last year before 40, the threshold that has, in American culture, come to mean something. 40 is the age at which certain reassessments begin. 40 is when a person might look at where they are and where they thought they would be, and note the distance between them. 40 is when certain possibilities close and certain realities become undeniable. Homer never reaches 40. He sits at 39 forever, always at the last moment before the reckoning, always 1 year away from having to fully confront what his life is. What his life is this. He lives in a house he loves, on a street he knows, with a wife he loves and children who have given him more joy than he has ever been able to express. He works at a job he does not understand in a facility that is slowly doing something to him that he cannot perceive, because the capacity to perceive it has been impaired by the very thing the facility has already done. He eats too much, drinks too much, sleeps too much, and in the gaps between the eating and the drinking and the sleeping, he moves through the world with a kind of openness, a fundamental availability to whatever the day produces. That is one of the show's most underexplored gifts. Homer is not calculating. He is not strategic. He responds to the world as it presents itself with an immediacy that bypasses the buffer of consideration, and the result is a life that is full of disasters but also full of moments that a more careful person would never have stumbled into. He befriends people effortlessly because he has not constructed the kind of social filters that would identify some people as not worth befriending. He experiences joy without irony because he has not developed the habit of standing apart from his own experience and observing it. He is, in many ways, the most honest person in Springfield, not in the sense of truthfulness, in the sense of transparency. What Homer feels is visible on Homer's face at the moment he feels it. There is no management, no performance, no construction of an impression for the benefit of others. He is exactly as delighted as he looks. He is exactly as hurt as he looks. He is exactly as confused as he looks, which is often. The crayon does something to him, but it does not make him someone else. The underlying Homer, the Homer whose IQ doubles when the crayon is removed, is still recognizably Homer. He is sharper and more articulate, and he can follow complex arguments and construct his own. But he is still emotionally transparent. He is still immediate. He is still the person who feels things before he thinks them, and who experiences the world first through the body before the mind catches up. What the crayon takes from him is the ability to process what he feels. He has the feelings. He cannot always understand what they are, or where they come from, or what they are telling him about his situation. He loves his family with a depth that the show makes clear across 36 seasons, and he cannot always tell you why, cannot articulate the reasons, cannot argue the case for the love that has been the central fact of his adult life. He simply carries it the way you carry a weight so familiar that you have stopped noticing it is there. Marge sees this. Marge has always seen this, in the way that a person who has spent enough time with another person learns to read what they mean rather than what they say. She translates Homer to the world and the world to Homer, standing in the space between his intentions and his execution, smoothing the gap, filling it in, making the connection that Homer cannot quite make himself. Their love story is one of the show's most consistent emotional facts, returned to in flashback across multiple seasons, retold in different eras as the floating timeline moves forward, the essential shape of it remaining constant even as the cultural details are updated. Homer saw Marge. He wanted her attention with the kind of focused, undivided desire that he has never shown toward anything that does not involve food or television. He got her attention. He has been trying, with varying degrees of success and with several catastrophic failures, to keep it ever since. In the episode where Homer finally wins Marge's acceptance by writing her name in lights on the town's water tower, there is a quality to his face in that moment, not triumph, not the satisfaction of a plan executed, just relief. Pure, physical relief. As if he has been holding his breath since the moment he realized he loved her and has only just been allowed to exhale. That is Homer's relationship with love. It is not comfortable. It is not assumed. It is the thing he is most afraid of losing, and the fear is always present underneath the joy, a low note beneath the melody, the awareness that something precious can be lost. His mother left when he was 6 years old. She did not die, though he was told she did. She was alive for those 27 years he believed her dead, alive and moving and thinking about him, and the loss he carried was not the loss of a person who was gone, but the loss of a person who was elsewhere, existing without him, somewhere he could not reach. The grief he processed as a child was grief for a fiction. The actual mother was alive. When he finds her, when the show reaches the episode that brings Mona back into Homer's life, there is something in the reunion that the show handles with unusual restraint. It does not play the moment for comedy. It does not undercut the emotion with a joke at the end of the scene. It allows Homer to stand in front of the mother he has been mourning for most of his life and feel something that the show does not immediately name or deflect. What he feels is complicated by what he then learns. That she did not leave him. That she was forced away. That the man who forced her away is his employer. The same man whose name Homer has been writing in the employee logs for decades, the man who cannot remember Homer's name despite Homer working for him across Homer's entire adult life. That the structure of Homer's grief, and the structure of Homer's livelihood, and the structure of Homer's diminishment are all connected to a single source. Homer cannot make this connection. He lacks the cognitive architecture to assemble the pieces into a picture. The crayon sits in his brain. The radiation has done what radiation does over decades of exposure. The man who should be able to look at his own life and see the pattern cannot, and will not, and the pattern persists regardless. There is a reading of Homer that makes him a tragic figure without any of the theory work, simply as a man. A man who was damaged early, whose damage was compounded continuously, whose capacity for the kind of understanding that might have allowed him to change his situation was taken from him before he was old enough to defend it. A man who loves his family with a completeness that his behavior does not always reflect, who wants his children to be okay with a need that he cannot always articulate, who goes back to the plant every morning not because he does not know his situation is wrong, but because wrong is what he has and he does not know what else to do with his hands. In the episode where Homer's IQ is briefly restored, he writes a report about the environmental dangers of the power plant. The report is accurate, thorough, the product of a mind operating without its chemical suppression. He sends it to every relevant authority, and then he watches what happens. He watches nothing happen. He watches the report disappear into the institutional space where inconvenient truths are received and processed and filed somewhere that is not the same place as action. Being smart enough to see the problem and powerless to solve it is worse than not seeing the problem. This is what Homer discovers. The crayon returns, the stupidity returns, the fog settles back in, and Homer goes back to work. There is a version of Springfield where Homer is the villain of his own story, where his passivity, his inability to connect his situation to its causes, his daily return to the facility that is poisoning his town, makes him complicit in everything the plant does. He is, after all, the person who is supposed to be stopping it. He is the safety inspector. He goes in every morning and does not inspect anything and goes home every evening, and the violations continue, and the water continues to receive what the plant sends it, and the fish continue to grow their third eyes. But the show does not present Homer as a villain, and not only because it is a comedy that requires its protagonist to be sympathetic, it presents him as something more specific and more honest. A person who was shaped by forces he did not choose and could not resist and cannot see, who is doing the best that a person shaped by those forces is capable of doing, which is most days not very much, but is also, on the days that matter, everything. The episode where Homer meets God actually meets God. Face to face, in a direct conversation, God tells him that his time is not yet, that he will learn what he is meant to learn, but not yet. It is a throwaway joke in the context of the episode, but it hangs in the air of the show's larger history in a particular way. Homer's time. His time for what? To understand? To see clearly? To become the person he would have been without the crayon, without the radiation, without the deal that bound him to the plant before he was old enough to know it had been struck? That moment never arrives. The floating timeline ensures it. 39 forever, always 1 year from the reckoning, always the last breath before the clarity. But the love does arrive. It arrives every episode, buried under the slapstick and the mishaps and the running gag of Homer's spectacular incompetence. The love for his children is real. The love for his wife is real. The way he goes back to the house at the end of every episode always finds his way back to it, always winds up on the couch under the blue light of the television with his family around him. That is real. Maybe that is what God meant, that Homer would learn what matters, that the education would not be intellectual, that it would be the accumulation, day by day and episode by episode, of the simple, unargued fact that this family is the thing worth returning to. Every disaster survives. Every catastrophe resets. The couch is always there. Homer always finds his way home. Section 5. Marge, the house, and everything she holds together. The house at 742 Evergreen Terrace is a 3-bedroom ranch-style home on a quiet street in a town that cannot decide what state it is in. It has a basement and a garage and a backyard with a barbecue grill that gets used on weekends when Homer is feeling optimistic about the afternoon. The kitchen is yellow. The living room has a couch that faces a television, and the couch is the show's most reliable constant, the piece of furniture that has appeared in more moments of American television history than any other couch in existence. Marge Simpson has been inside that house for 36 years. She has also been many other places. She has worked at the nuclear plant. She has worked at the police department, the restaurant, the pretzel franchise, the gambling boat, the art gallery, the real estate office, and several other locations that the show's episodic structure has provided and then retracted. She has had careers, had moments of independence and professional identity, had conversations with the version of herself that exists outside the house on Evergreen Terrace, and she has always come back. This is presented as choice. It is presented, consistently and carefully, as the choice of a woman who knows what she values and has organized her life around those values. Marge has considered alternatives. The show has given her alternatives. A career as a painter that generated serious critical attention. A romantic interest from a man who was handsome and attentive and did not smell like the break room at a nuclear plant. A political opportunity, a musical talent, a business acumen that the episodes touching on it suggested was real and significant. She chose the house. She chose Homer, repeatedly, in the specific way that a long marriage requires, choosing not once but continuously, not in the easy moments but in the difficult ones, not when it is comfortable but when it is hard. The difficulty of loving Homer is something the show returns to with unusual honesty for a comedy. Homer forgets things that matter to Marge. He prioritizes his comfort over hers with a consistency that is not malicious, but is nevertheless a continuous small weight she carries. He makes decisions that affect both of them without consulting her. He fails to understand, sometimes by a startling margin, what she is feeling or what she needs, and Marge absorbs this. She absorbs it with the patience of someone who has made a calculation that the whole is worth more than the cost of the parts, that the life they have built together has a value that survives and even requires the difficulty. That loving Homer well means accepting Homer fully, and that full acceptance means the messy version, the forgetful version, the occasionally catastrophically thoughtless version. She is not a saint. The show is careful about this. Marge has moments of real anger, real frustration, real despair. She has stood in her kitchen and understood with complete clarity that her situation is unfair, that she has given more than she has received in this particular ledger, that the scales are not balanced and have not been balanced for some time. Whew. She has acknowledged this to herself and, occasionally, to the show's audience, in the particular tone of a woman who has been honest with herself about something difficult and has decided to go on anyway. The blue hair is the show's most persistent visual mystery. It rises above her head in a tower that defies gravity, that maintains its structure through every physical situation Marge finds herself in, that has been the same shape since the show began, and that nobody in Springfield's universe has ever remarked upon as unusual. It is simply Marge's hair. It is simply how she looks. But the hair does something structurally in the show's visual language. It marks her. In every scene, in every crowd, in every frame where multiple characters share the space, Marge is locatable immediately by the blue that rises above the other heads. She is visible. She is findable. There is something in that visibility that resonates with her role. You can always find Marge. In the literal sense, she is visually distinctive, and in the deeper sense. When something goes wrong in the Simpson household, when the emotional temperature rises past the point that Homer can manage, or the kids can navigate alone, Marge is findable. She is there. She has been making herself findable, reliably, and continuously for 36 years. The house is the expression of what she holds. Walk through it, slowly, in the way that nighttime makes possible. The kitchen where she makes breakfast, the particular domestic ritual of morning in a house with 3 children and a husband who would eat anything placed in front of him, the yellow walls and the familiar sounds of the appliances, the light coming through the window over the sink, the living room with its couch and its television, and the family arrangement that the show has returned to as its central image more than any other. The 5 of them, together, the blue light playing over their faces, the sound low enough that you can hear Maggie's pacifier, the stairs, the bedrooms above. Bart's room, recognizable by the skateboard and the particular quality of chaos that a 10-year-old boy generates and sustains without apparent effort. Lisa's room, recognizable by the saxophone and the books and the evidence, everywhere, of a mind that is always working, always processing, always reaching for the next thing it needs to understand. Maggie's room, quieter and more observant than it should be for a room belonging to a 1-year-old. The master bedroom, where Marge and Homer have slept together for the entirety of the show's run. The particular intimacy of that room, the evidence of 2 people who know each other completely, who have organized a shared space to accommodate each other's habits and preferences, who have been in each other's presence long enough that the presence is part of the landscape, expected and missed when it is not there. Marge worries. This is one of her defining characteristics, stated and restated, and it is important to be precise about what kind of worry it is. Not the performative worry that functions as control, the anxiety that masquerades as concern while actually being about the anxious person's need for a particular outcome. Marge's worry is the productive kind. It is forward-looking. It is oriented toward the prevention of specific things she has assessed as genuine threats to the people she loves. She worries about Homer's safety, which is a reasonable thing to worry about given Homer's relationship with safety. She worries about the children's education, about Bart's trajectory, about whether Lisa is being provided with the kind of challenge and stimulation that her particular intelligence requires. She worries about the budget, about the infrastructure of the life they have built, and whether it will hold against the pressures that are perpetually being applied to it. The worrying is love with a practical face on. It is the form love takes when love is also responsibility, when the person you love is not entirely equipped to keep themselves safe, and the people who depend on both of you need someone to be paying attention to the things that could go wrong. Marge is paying attention. She has been paying attention for 36 years, and the degree to which the Simpson family's life has not fallen entirely apart is in significant measure attributable to the quality and consistency of that attention. There is a moment in an episode that examines what Springfield would look like if certain key people in it had never been born, where the absence of Marge from Homer's life produces a result that is not comic, but genuinely bleak. Homer without Marge is a different kind of loss than Homer in the show's ordinary episodes. It is not the temporarily loss that resolves by the end of the act. It is the loss that has no recovery, because the recovery requires a specific person who is not there. This is not a comfortable thing for the show to acknowledge, and it acknowledges it carefully, briefly, and then steps back. But it acknowledges it. The house is what Marge has built. Not the physical structure that was there when they moved in, but the house as a home, as a place that has a character, a warmth, a quality of shelter that is specific to the life lived inside it. That character is Marge's construction. She has built it the way you build anything built from sustained effort over a long time, through daily choices and daily maintenance, and the daily decision to invest in the thing you have rather than the things you might have had. She makes it look easy. This is the magic trick, the one that the show performs so consistently that it stops being visible. Marge makes holding everything together look easy. The house is fed, the children are clothed, the homework is supervised, the emotional crises are navigated, the budget somehow stretches to cover what it needs to cover, and Homer is loved in the way that Homer needs to be loved consistently, patiently, with the particular attention of someone who knows him better than he knows himself. Behind the ease is the work. The show occasionally turns the camera toward the work, shows the audience what happens when Marge is absent, or when the effort required to sustain her role becomes visible. In those episodes, the truth beneath the performed ease becomes apparent. The ease is a gift Marge gives the family. It is not the reality. The reality is continuous labor, continuous attention, continuous choosing to pour energy into a structure that takes it all and asks for more. She does it anyway. This is the fact at the center of Marge. Not a flaw, not a tragic limitation, not evidence of a suppressed self that should have escaped. A choice made from values she has held consistently across 36 years of having every reason to revise them. The house on Evergreen Terrace is real because Marge made it real. The family coheres because Marge chose to be the thing that coheres it. At night, when the house is quiet and the children are asleep and Homer is asleep and the television is off and the street is dark, Marge is the last thing standing between the house and the night. And she is always there. She has always been there. She will be there when you come back. Section 6. Bart Simpson and the Myth of the 10-Year-Old. Bart Simpson has been 10 years old since December of 1989. In the real world, a child born in December of 1989 is in their mid-30s now. They have a history. They graduated high school, made choices about what came next, accumulated a body of experience that has shaped them into someone specific, someone different from the 10-year-old they were. They have a past. Bart has no past in that sense. He has the same past he has always had, refreshed episodically when a flashback is required. But fundamentally static, he is always 10, always the same distance from birth, always the same relationship to the childhood behind him and the adolescence he never reaches. The mythology of the 10-year-old boy has a long cultural history in America. The bad boy, the mischief maker, the kid who is in trouble just enough to be interesting without ever being in trouble enough to become something darker. Tom Sawyer. Huck Finn. The whole tradition of the American childhood that is defined by rebellion against rules, by the particular freedom of being old enough to move through the world with some independence, but not yet old enough for the rules to apply with their adult weight. Bart lives in this tradition. He is its animated descendant. But Bart is doing something that Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn could not do, which is persist. They grew up inside their stories, and then the stories ended. Bart does not grow up. Bart does not get to have the experience of being 15, of being 17, of standing at the edge of adulthood and looking at what is on the other side. He is held at 10, perpetually, in the last comfortable year of American boyhood before the expectations begin to change shape. And the particular kind of trouble that Bart causes, the pranks, the graffiti, the legendary phone calls to Moe's Tavern, the skateboard, the slingshot, the relationship with authority that is adversarial without being genuinely dangerous. This kind of trouble has a defined relationship with age. It is trouble that is exactly appropriate to a 10-year-old. It would be different trouble at 12, at 15, at 20. It is calibrated to the year in which it lives. Bart stays 10, because the trouble he represents is only tolerable at 10. The mischief of a grown man is not charming. The rebellion of a middle-aged person against institutional authority takes on different connotations than the rebellion of a kid who just wants to get out of school. Bart's whole cultural function depends on him being exactly as old as he is, and so he stays there, and the show's universe bends to accommodate him. The relationship with his father is the show's other great constant. Homer and Bart exist in a permanent loop of conflict, reconciliation, and return to the beginning. Homer is exasperated by Bart. Homer loves Bart. Homer does not know how to express the love except through the exasperation, which means that what Bart experiences on the receiving end is mostly the exasperation. The love is present, but it is a love that cannot find its own voice. There are episodes where this breaks open, where something happens that cuts through the ordinary noise of their relationship and what is underneath becomes visible. The episode where Homer coaches Bart's baseball team and the season comes down to a single game and Bart, who cannot hit, manages to get hit by a pitch and walks to first base, and that is enough. That one moment to make the team's victory possible, and Homer's face in that moment is not about baseball at all. It is about seeing something in his son that he had not been certain was there. A capacity for absorbing difficulty, for staying in the thing even when the thing is hurting, for finding the way to contribute even without the ability to do what the situation apparently required. Homer sees Bart in that moment, really sees him. And what he sees makes him proud in a way that the show does not dress up or explain. There is the episode where Bart fails his final exam and faces the prospect of being held back a year, of being separated from his class, of the particular social catastrophe that the fourth grade has constructed meaning around. The episode ends in a way that the show does not fully commit to Bart's studies. Bart works harder than the show has ever shown him working, and whether he passes or fails is left in a kind of productive ambiguity that was rare for the show at that point in its history. What the episode is really about is the moment, the night before the exam, when Homer sits with Bart, not doing anything in particular, just being present, just occupying the same space, and Bart understands without anything being said that he is not alone in this. That the man who is sitting next to him, who cannot help him study because his own understanding of the material is not adequate to the task, is sitting there anyway. Because being there is the one thing he can do. Homer's parenting is like that. It is often wrong. It is often counterproductive. It is occasionally actively harmful, but it is almost always present. Homer shows up. He shows up at the school and the police station and the hospital and the various other institutional sites where Bart's life plays out, and he shows up not prepared, not equipped, not knowing what to say, but there. And there, in the show's emotional logic, counts for quite a lot. Bart's relationship with Lisa is the other central emotional fact of his childhood. They do not show it often. The show is careful to maintain the adversarial surface of the sibling relationship, the competitive mockery that is the language through which siblings who love each other communicate the love without saying it directly. But there are episodes that step through the surface, that look at what is actually there between an 8-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy who share a house and a family and 36 years of proximity. What is there is considerable. Lisa understands Bart in ways that the rest of the family does not. She understands that the rebellion is not really about the rules, that it is about something deeper, the desire to be seen as more than what the institutional frameworks of his life have decided he is. She understands that underneath the underachiever who the school has given up on, there is a person with more capacity than the test scores suggest. She has told him this at moments when the show was willing to be direct about it, and the telling has mattered. And Bart, who does not show tenderness easily, who performs carelessness with the consistency of someone who has made carelessness into a defense, shows something different with Lisa: a protectiveness, a willingness to be made uncomfortable by her situation, to step outside his own concerns and notice that hers are real and serious and deserve more response than the world around her is providing. The episode where Bart discovers that the other kids have been unkind to Lisa in the specific social way that children are unkind, and responds by organizing something on her behalf, not announcing that he is doing it, not doing it in a way that draws attention to himself, just doing it because she is his sister and the situation is wrong. That episode is one of the quietest expressions of love the show has produced. Bart is 10 years old. He has been 10 years old for longer than most of his viewers have been alive. And he will remain 10, carrying the mythology of American boyhood through every season of a changing world, the permanent kid in the permanent summer of a childhood that never ends. There is something both beautiful and melancholy in this, if you let yourself feel it. The thing about being 10 is that you do not know yet that being 10 is something you will lose. The freedom of it, the particular quality of not yet responsible, that allows a kid to move through the world without the weight of consequence that adulthood attaches to everything. 10-year-old Bart does not know that this is finite, that the world will eventually begin to demand things of him that 10 cannot provide. He is spared that knowledge. He is spared it forever. And somewhere in that, in the image of a kid who will always have his skateboard and his slingshot and his capacity for mischief, who will always be on the other side of the year that changes things, somewhere in that is the reason we keep coming back to watch. We are not watching Bart. We are watching 10. We are watching what it was like to be 10, before we understood what 10 was going to cost us eventually. Section 7. Lisa and the Loneliness of Seeing Clearly. Lisa Marie Simpson is 8 years old, and she has been 8 years old for 36 years, and she knows too much about everything, and she cannot stop. The knowing is the thing. The knowing is the gift and the wound, both. Inseparable from each other, the same quality of mind that makes her capable of understanding things that should be beyond her age, also making her incapable of the comfortable incomprehension that is, for most of Springfield, a way of life. She knows about the environment. She knows about the power plant and what it is doing to the water. She knows about the structural injustices that the town's social arrangements encode, about the ways that institutions fail the people they are supposed to serve, about the gap between what Springfield claims to be and what it demonstrably is. She has read the books. She has done the research. She has followed the arguments to their conclusions, and the conclusions are not comfortable. And she is 8, and nobody listens. This is the central condition of Lisa's life, and the show treats it with more sustained attention and more genuine emotional honesty than it treats almost any other character's situation. The isolation of being the most intelligent person in a room that has no use for intelligence. The particular loneliness of seeing clearly in a community that has organized its collective life around not seeing. The saxophone is the expression that language cannot provide. Lisa plays the alto saxophone with a proficiency that the show presents as genuinely exceptional, not as a child who is good for her age, but as a musician who would be remarkable at any age. The music she makes is jazz, specifically a tradition built on the relationship between structure and improvisation, between the rules and the freedom that exists within and against them. Jazz is the musical language of something that wants to break out of its container while acknowledging that the container gives it shape. Lisa's relationship to her family, her town, her social environment is the same relationship. She is shaped by the container. She cannot exist without the container. And she is always pressing against it, always reaching past its edges, always finding the note that the structure did not explicitly permit, but that the logic of the music required. She plays in her room. This is important. She plays when she is alone, when nobody is asking her to perform or to justify the music, or to defend its importance against the skepticism of a household that hears her but does not always listen. The music she makes in her room is different from the music she makes in public. It is more free, more extended. following the line wherever it leads, without the self-consciousness that comes from being heard by people who may not understand what they are hearing. Those moments, the private moments of music in the yellow room, are the times when Lisa is most fully herself, not the Lisa who argues for environmental protection at the town meeting, not the Lisa who confronts the school system's failures in a formal setting, not the Lisa who is performing intelligence for an audience that will grade her on it. Just Lisa, in her room, with the sound of something she loves, becoming the thing she is most fully. Her relationship with her mother is warm, real, the particular kind of closeness that comes from two people in the same household who can recognize each other's intelligence and loneliness, who have both felt, in different ways, the constraint of a world that did not make room for what they are. Marge does not have Lisa's intellect, and Lisa does not have Marge's patience, but they have each other's company. And in a house that can be as isolating as the Simpson house can be, company is substantial. Her relationship with her father is more complicated and more tender for the complication. Homer does not understand Lisa. This is a simple fact that the show acknowledges without embarrassment. The things Lisa cares about are, for the most part, outside Homer's experiential range. Environmental activism, music theory, animal rights, moral philosophy, the relationship between structural injustice and individual experience. Homer's engagement with these topics is limited, and sometimes his limitations cause him to respond to Lisa's engagement in ways that are hurtful without intending to be. But Homer loves Lisa. This is equally simple. He loves her with the helpless specificity that is the best kind of parental love, the kind that is not about who you want your child to be, but about who they actually are. He is proud of her in ways he cannot articulate. He shows up for her at the debates and the recitals and the tournaments and the school events, equipped with the wrong understanding of what he is attending, but present, reliably present, because she is there and his being there matters to her, even when his being there is imperfect. There is an episode where Lisa wins a contest and Homer is so proud that he tells everyone he meets, strangers at the grocery store, the people in line ahead of him, anyone who will stand still long enough to hear, he tells them about his daughter, about what she did, about the specific thing she accomplished. He does not fully understand the contest. He does not need to. He knows she won it. Lisa exists in Springfield like a signal that the town is not equipped to receive. The signal is consistent, clear, reaching. The town's receivers are tuned to different frequencies, to comfort and repetition, and the agreed-upon narrative that everything is fine, and Lisa's signal which says everything is not fine. Everything is specifically and demonstrably not fine. And here is the evidence, and here are the implications. Does not fit through the available channels. She learns to live with this, not comfortably. The show does not present Lisa as someone who has made her peace with being unheard. She continues to argue, continues to advocate, continues to bring the evidence to the people who will not act on it. The persistence is partly character and partly the particular stubbornness of 8 years old. The age before the cost of persistence becomes something you fully account for before you begin. But she also learns something from Maggie. Not consciously, not through conversation. Maggie does not have conversations, but through proximity, through the shared experience of being a person in this family who understands more than the family knows. Lisa has observed what Maggie's silence provides. She has watched her sister accomplish things by staying invisible in ways that Lisa, who announces herself, cannot. She has not learned to be silent. She is incapable of silence in the essential sense. But she has learned that the world has a ceiling, and the ceiling is low, and the only thing you can do with a low ceiling is either keep hitting your head on it or find the room where it is higher. She is still looking for that room. The show has depicted Lisa's future twice in significant ways, and both depictions suggest a person who never found the ceiling comfortable, but who found, eventually, a life that accommodated what she was. A president, or close to it. A professor, a writer, an advocate, the specific form shifts, but the essential shape is consistent. Lisa does not become someone different when she grows up. She becomes a more fully realized version of the person she already is at 8. She just has to survive Springfield long enough to get there. Tonight, in the yellow house on Evergreen Terrace, she is probably awake past her bedtime, reading something the school does not know she has read, working through an argument she will not be able to share with anyone tomorrow because the audience is not there. Her lamp is on, the saxophone is in the corner, the room smells like books and the particular brand of shampoo that Marge buys. She is fine. She is always fine in the way that people who are never entirely comfortable are always fuzzy, which is functioning, persisting, reaching for the next thing to understand. The signal is still transmitting. The town is still not picking it up. The lamp is on. Section 8. Maggie and the Secret Intelligence. Maggie Simpson is 1 year old. She has been 1 year old since 1989. She will be 1 year old for as long as the show runs. She cannot walk reliably. She cannot speak. She communicates through the sound of her pacifier, through the particular expressiveness of eyes that take up a significant portion of her face, through the careful calibration of a silence that does more work than almost any other character's words. The silence is the point. If you watch Maggie across the episodes, not as a background character, not as the visual element that rounds out the family in the couch opening, but as an actual subject of study, what you see is a baby who is watching everything. Every scene she is in, she is watching. Her eyes track movement. Her attention orients toward whatever is most significant in the environment. She is not a baby who has not noticed what is happening around her. She is a baby who has decided that the best response to what she has noticed is to not reveal that she noticed it. The longest daycare is the piece of evidence that anchors the Maggie theory most firmly. In that 7-minute theatrical short, without dialogue, without any of the verbal scaffolding that the show normally uses to tell its audience what to think about what it is seeing, Maggie solves problems that require sustained cognition across multiple steps. She reads an environment. She identifies the threat within it. She develops a strategy to address the threat that accounts for the behavior of multiple other agents, the bully, the staff, the physical structure of the facility, and she executes the strategy with the kind of adaptive flexibility that allows her to adjust when the first approach does not work. She does all of this while being physically limited to the motor capacities of a 1-year-old. She falls, she crawls, she drops things. Her body is genuinely 1-year-old, and it keeps getting in the way of her mind's intentions. But the mind never stops. Every failure of execution is met with a revised approach. Every obstacle is assessed and a path around it is found. The butterfly is saved. This is not the behavior of an infant. This is the behavior of someone who is trapped in an infant's body and is making the best possible use of the available tools. The shooting of Burns, whatever the real story of who pulled the trigger, has one undeniable element in the official account. Maggie was present. Maggie was in the parking lot. Burns encountered Maggie. And the final shot of the episode, Maggie alone in the room, checking that she is unobserved. Performing the trigger motion is a moment that the show presents as ambiguous, because it wants to be ambiguous, but that functions, whatever it means, as a display of something that babies do not typically display. She waited until she was alone. She confirmed she was not being watched. She then performed an action she understood had significance, in a space she had deliberately made private. That sequence is not infant behavior. It is strategic behavior. It is the behavior of someone who understands the concept of an audience and has assessed the risks of performing certain things in front of one. Homer's coma theory, if you bring it into Maggie's story, transforms her in a particular way. If everything since 1993 is Homer's dream, then Maggie is the projection of what Homer hopes his youngest child is. He cannot see her grow up. He cannot watch her develop. He is frozen in a hospital bed at the moment. She is still the smallest thing in the house, still the one who needs protection, still the one he carries rather than the one who walks on her own. So in the dream, he makes her extraordinary. He gives her a mind that can keep pace with anything the world might put in front of her. He makes her the one who does not need protection, who is, in fact, the family's most reliable protector, operating from the background, invisible to the threats that would have to see her coming to stop her. A father who cannot be there, imagining his daughter as the person who will be okay without him. There is a quieter reading, one that lives next to the dream theory without requiring it. Maggie watches Lisa. She has watched Lisa her whole life. She has watched her sister announce her intelligence, deploy it in every available situation, bring it to every argument and every confrontation, and receive, in return, isolation and dismissal and the accumulated small injuries of being the smartest person in a room that resents you for it. Maggie has taken notes. She has looked at Lisa's life and extracted the lesson that Lisa has not managed to extract from it, which is that the intelligence itself is not the liability. The visibility of the intelligence is the liability. Lisa announces. Maggie does not announce, Lisa argues. Maggie observes. Lisa is known, thoroughly, by everyone in Springfield as the one who is smart and who cares about things and who will tell you about both at length. Maggie is known as the baby, the youngest, the pacifier, the one who is not a concern, who requires protection, who cannot be a factor in any calculation because she cannot speak and cannot walk and is, by the standard assessments available to the adults in her life, simply present. Being simply present in a room where you are not a concern is the most powerful possible intelligence position. You hear everything. You see everything. Nobody adjusts what they say or do because you are there, because your being there does not register as a threat or a witness or a participant. You are the furniture, and the furniture hears all the conversations that the furniture is not supposed to hear. Maggie has been the furniture in the Simpson household for 36 years. What she knows is incalculable. She knows the full history of the family, every argument and every reconciliation, every moment of private disclosure that Homer and Marge thought they were having between themselves while the baby was in the room. She knows the town, what happens at the level of daily life when people have stopped performing for any audience, what the social infrastructure looks like from the perspective of someone who is never suspected of paying attention. She knows what happened with Burns. Whatever the truth of that situation, she was there and she has always been there, and she has never said a word about any of it. The pacifier in her mouth is, in this reading, not a developmental accessory. It is a seal, a deliberate closure of the channel through which the information could leave. She has the information, she has chosen to retain it. She will release it, if she ever releases it, on her own terms, at a moment of her own choosing, for reasons that will have been thoroughly considered in the silence of 36 years of watching. The show has occasionally gestured toward what Maggie's eventual revelation might look like. Episodes that flash forward to adult Maggie show a person who is confident, grounded, possessed of the particular sureness of someone who has never doubted their own understanding of a situation. She does not appear to be working out who she is in those flash forwards. She already knows. She knew a long time ago. The question the show leaves permanently open is what she plans to do with what she knows. Springfield has no idea. And that, given everything the show has told us about Springfield, is probably exactly the right position to be in. Section 9. The side characters who prove the town runs on damage. There is a man in Springfield named Hans Moleman. He is small and nearly blind, and he moves through the town's background with the resigned quality of someone who has long since stopped expecting the world to provide him with anything other than suffering. He is consistently, serially, and dramatically injured in ways that should be fatal. He is crushed, burned, buried, struck by vehicles, consumed by animals, and subjected to structural collapses. He dies, in the canonical episodes rather than the fantasy sequences, with a regularity that no other character in the show's history can match. And then he is back. Next episode, the following scene, whatever the structure requires. He is back, small and nearly blind and ready to suffer again. He has stated his age as 31. The visual evidence suggests otherwise. He looks like the oldest man in Springfield, older even than Burns if Burns were not sustained by his weekly treatments. Something has aged Hans Moleman catastrophically. Something has taken whatever he was at 31 and compressed it into whatever he is now. This figure of perpetual misfortune whose relationship with death is so casual it has stopped being alarming. The radiation theory makes a specific argument about Moleman. If Springfield's contamination affects different people differently, if the mutation produces enhancement in some cases and diminishment in others, then Moleman represents a particular expression of that. His apparent aging, far beyond what his stated years should produce, his relationship with physical harm, surviving things that should kill him, dying from them and returning, as if whatever the contamination has done to him extends to his relationship with mortality itself. He is the canary in the coal mine and also, somehow, the canary that has survived every mine. Every time he dies, he comes back. The radiation that should be lethal has made him in some sense unkillable, while simultaneously aging him decades past his time and removing from him any apparent possibility of a life not defined by misfortune. Springfield does not notice Moleman's situation. This is consistent. Springfield does not notice most things about itself that require noticing. The three-eyed fish, the glowing billionaire, The man who has died more times than anyone has counted and who keeps showing up in the background of the next scene, these are all part of the agreed-upon landscape, the texture of a town that has been so thoroughly habituated to the impossible that the impossible is just Tuesday. Then there is Ned Flanders. Ned is the show's most sophisticated exploration of the gap between the performance of a virtue and the possession of it. He is Homer's neighbor, his counterpart in almost every measurable dimension. Where Homer is lazy, Ned is disciplined. Where Homer forgets, Ned remembers. Where Homer is faithless in the ordinary sense of inconsistency, Ned has organized his entire life around a faith he practices with the kind of attention most people never give to anything. He is a genuinely good man. The show presents this without irony, which is remarkable for a show that presents almost nothing without irony. Ned's goodness is real. His generosity is real. The patience he shows toward Homer, episode after episode, bearing the costs of Homer's selfishness and carelessness and outright cruelty with a consistency that should be saintly, that patience is real. And then the show shows you where it comes from. Ned was not always this way. The behavioral modification episode, the one where Hurricane Barbara destroys Ned's house and the community's shoddy reconstruction of it causes him to snap, reveals that the person underneath the patience is someone quite different. The psychiatrist who treated young Ned spent years conditioning the aggression and the impulse out of him. The kindness is real, but it is not natural. It is the product of intervention, of a deliberate reshaping of a personality that had different inclinations before the reshaping began. This does not make the kindness false. A kindness practiced for long enough, built into the habits and reflexes of a life, becomes real through its practice regardless of its origin. Ned is kind. The fact that he was made kind rather than born kind does not empty the kindness of content, but it does explain the fragility. Under enough pressure, the conditioning shows its limits. The person it covered over is still there, still carrying the original energy that the conditioning was designed to suppress. And when the pressure exceeds what the conditioning was built to withstand, that person makes a partial appearance. Ned snaps. Ned says the things he has been holding for decades. And then the hold reasserts itself, and he apologizes, and the kindness returns, and Springfield accepts the apology and moves on. God talks to Homer. God does not talk to Ned. This is the detail that the show drops without comment, and that resonates, if you let it, with everything about Ned's situation. Homer, who goes to church irregularly and with minimal engagement, who has explicitly stated his preference for not attending, who has more of an adversarial relationship with organized religion than a devotional one. Homer meets God personally, twice, has direct conversations, receives specific assurance that his life has meaning and that the things he hopes for are within reach. Ned, who has structured his life around his faith with a rigor and consistency that Homer cannot conceive of, who attends every service and observes every practice and has organized his family, his business, and his self-image around his relationship with a God he has never doubted, Ned has never received a word. The show does not explain this. It does not resolve it. It simply depicts it again and again across seasons. Homer's easy access to divine conversation, Ned's perfect silence. The man who takes his faith most seriously is the man from whom the object of that faith is most withheld. There is a reading of this that is simply dark. The universe, even within the show's fiction, does not reward virtue. The rewards go to the man who needs them to go somewhere, and the faith goes unanswered for the man who is already doing the work without reward. But there is another reading, slower and more complicated. God does not speak to Ned because Ned does not need God to speak to him. Ned has already made his choices. He has already committed to a way of living that he does not require ongoing confirmation for. He gets up every morning and does what he has decided to do, regardless of whether anyone is watching or anyone is pleased with it. His faith is not transactional. He is not waiting for a return on the investment. Homer needs the reassurance. Homer's life is structured around uncertainty, around the fear of loss, around the chronic insecurity that his childhood's disruption planted in him and that has grown alongside him ever since. Homer needs to know that there is something behind everything, some arrangement that means the people he loves will be okay, some guarantee that the love he has poured into his family will not simply dissolve when the structure that contains it is removed. God speaks to Homer because Homer is afraid. God has nothing to say to Ned because Ned has already answered his own questions. This does not make Ned's silence less lonely. The loneliness is real. The silence is real. The gap between the life he is living and the acknowledgement he will never receive is real, and it does not help him to know that he has made the choices correctly. The loneliness does not go away because the choices were right. Ned Flanders lives next door to Homer Simpson. He has lived next door to Homer for 36 years. He has lent Homer tools that Homer has not returned. He has offered help that Homer has accepted without gratitude. He has been the collateral damage of Homer's disasters with a regularity that should have long since exhausted his capacity for goodwill. And he is still there, still next to the fence. Still with the characteristic greeting that the show has attached to him like a signature, the drawn-out salutation that contains, somehow, the full complexity of the man, his warmth, his persistence, his genuine pleasure in human contact despite everything the contact has cost him. He is still there. Then there is Mo Zieslak. Mo's Tavern is the place where Homer and the men he knows best spend the time they are not required to spend elsewhere. It is not a nice bar. It does not aspire to be a nice bar. It is exactly the bar. It is dim, sticky, presided over by a man whose emotional range runs from vaguely hostile to openly despairing, whose face the show has made into a sustained visual joke about the relationship between inner life and outer presentation. Mo is lonely in a way that the show treats as comedy, but that functions as something more sustained. He has had relationships that have not worked out. He has had moments of hope that have been extinguished. He has had the particular experience, multiple times, of believing that something was about to change, that the specific loneliness of his situation was about to find its resolution, and then watching the resolution fail. The bar is the shape of his life. He has been behind that bar for the show's entire run, pouring drinks for men who are glad to have somewhere to go, listening to the conversations that happen in the space between one drink and the next, participating in the social life of Springfield from behind a counter that separates him from the part of the social life that is warm and held and mutual. He is on the outside of the warmth, serving it, facilitating it, never quite inside it. The show has given him backstory, given him context for the loneliness, a childhood in a difficult environment, early experiences that shaped a personality not well suited to the easy intimacy that relationships require. The loneliness is not simply misfortune. It is structural. It is the result of a self that was formed under conditions that did not produce the tools for connection. He tries. This is the thing about Mo that the comedy keeps covering, but that keeps breaking through. He tries, imperfectly and with poor judgment, and with the particular desperation of someone who has been trying for so long that the trying itself has become its own kind of barrier. But the trying is real. The wanting is real. And then there is Chief Wiggum, and Principal Skinner, and Apu, and the long, complicated arc of how the show used and then reconsidered that character. And Krusty, the performer whose offstage life is a sustained demonstration of what happens when talent and self-destruction occupy the same body over a very long time. And Sideshow Bob, who is in some sense the show's most honest expression of thwarted ambition, a man of genuine intelligence and genuine capability who is bent permanently out of shape by his inability to accept the boundaries of the role the world has assigned him. And Barney, who is Homer's oldest friend and who has been drunk for most of the time we have known him, and who has, in the rare episodes that address it directly, a relationship with that state of affairs that is more complicated and more painful than the background gag usually suggests. Each of these people lives in Springfield. Each of them carries a damage that is specific to them, that is personal history, that explains in a narrative sense why they are the way they are. Each of them also carries, underneath the personal history, the ambient damage of the town itself, the water, the air, the light from the cooling towers that falls on every house on every street. Springfield runs on damage, not because the writers are nihilists, not because the show is cruel. Because the show has been looking at American life for 36 years, and what it has found, consistently and honestly, and sometimes tenderly, is that American life runs on damage too. On the gap between what people hoped for and what they received, on the loneliness of the bar and the silence of the church, and the accumulation of small, unaddressed injuries that shape a person from the inside without the person ever being able to name exactly what is wrong. Springfield is not a diagnosis, it is a mirror. The damage in the characters is the damage the show found when it looked at the world and drew what it saw. Section 10. Springfield's collective memory and why it always forgets. Consider what Springfield has survived. The town has been destroyed physically, structurally, reduced to rubble, and rebuilt. This has happened more than once. It has been sealed under a glass dome by the federal government. It has been invaded. It has been the site of natural disasters and unnatural ones. It has experienced civic catastrophes of every scale, from the granular, the corruption of a specific institution, to the total, the contamination of the entire environment. Each time the show returns to the default. The town is intact. The crisis is not mentioned. The characters who experience the destruction do not reference it, do not carry it, do not show any evidence in the following episode that the preceding one contained anything significant. Springfield has a perfect reset, episode to episode, that functions like a kind of institutional amnesia, not the forgetting that is a symptom of memory damage, but the forgetting that is a choice, the strategic maintenance of a narrative that requires certain things to not have happened. The Principal and the Pauper is the episode that makes this visible in a way that no other episode does. Seymour Skinner, the principal of Springfield Elementary, is revealed to be an imposter. His real name is Armin Tamzarian. The man he has been impersonating, the real Seymour Skinner, was a decorated Vietnam veteran who was captured and presumed dead. He survived, escaped, and returned to Springfield to find his identity occupied by someone else. The town holds a meeting. Both men are present. The situation is fully explained. The evidence is unambiguous, and the town votes. They vote to keep the lie. Judge Snyder issues a legal decree. The imposter is legally and officially the real Skinner. The actual Seymour Skinner, the man whose identity was stolen, is physically removed from Springfield, tied to a railroad car, and expelled from the community. The judge makes it explicitly illegal to ever refer to these events again, under penalty of torture. The penalty of torture. The show says this plainly. Anyone who speaks the truth about who the principal of Springfield Elementary actually is, faces torture as a legal consequence. The truth is not merely unwelcome, it is criminalized. And the criminalization is legally codified, issued by a judge, enforced by the state. This is the infrastructure of Springfield's forgetting. It is not passive. It is not simply a failure to remember. It is an active, organized, legally enforced maintenance of a specific version of reality, backed by the threat of violence against anyone who prefers the actual version. The real Seymour Skinner is Springfield's canary in the coal mine. He arrives with proof that the official narrative is false. He presents the evidence directly. He stands in front of the community and offers them the truth. They exile him. He is not discredited. He is not rebutted. The evidence he brings is not addressed. He is simply put on a train and removed. And the mechanism that allows this to happen is the community's collective agreement that comfort is more valuable than truth. That the life they have built around Armin Tamzarian is real in the sense that matters, not the sense of correspondence to fact, but the sense of functional utility. Tamzarian has been their principal for 20 years. He knows their children. He knows the school. He has filled the role. The real Skinner would disrupt all of that. Not because he would do the job worse, but because his existence would require the community to hold two things in mind at once: the relationship they have built and the false premise that relationship was built on. Springfield cannot hold two things in mind. It has never been able to hold two things in mind. The capacity for that particular cognitive complexity, the capacity to acknowledge that something can be both functionally real and foundationally false, requires a tolerance for ambiguity that Springfield's contaminated and simplified collective psychology cannot sustain. So they choose. They choose the lie. They choose it formally, legally, openly, with full knowledge of the alternative, and they enforce the choice with the threat of violence. This is not presented as satire of a particular political tendency or a specific historical moment, though it resonates with both. It is presented as Springfield. It is the most direct expression of how the town has always operated the decision to maintain the agreed-upon reality, to protect the social infrastructure from the disruption that truth would cause, to keep the system running at the cost of the reality that should sustain it. The dome goes up and comes down and nobody mentions the dome. The fish have 3 eyes and nobody tests the water. The plant has 342 violations, and the inspector eats a donut. Burns glows in the dark, and the town concludes he must be an alien. Homer's mother was alive for 27 years that he spent mourning her, and the revelation that she was alive, that the system that destroyed his family was operated by his own employer, produces no confrontation, no resignation, no action. Each of these is a version of the vote. Each one is Springfield looking at a truth and choosing, collectively or individually, to maintain the fiction instead. Not always through a legal decree and a railroad car. Sometimes through nothing more formal than the decision not to notice, the agreement not to ask. The social pressure of a community that has a specific story about itself that it needs everyone to participate in, and that applies whatever pressure is available to ensure the participation. The radiation theory provides one explanation for why this keeps happening: the cognitive damage of decades of low-level exposure, the specific impairment of the critical thinking functions that would allow a person to look at a three-eyed fish and follow the chain of inference to its conclusion. Homer's brain with the crayon in it, scaled up to an entire community, the town's collective reason operating at a reduced capacity, because the thing that reduced Homer's individual reason has been reducing everyone's for 30 years. The coma theory provides another. If everything is Homer's dream, then the forgetting is the dream's mechanism. Dreams do not maintain narrative consistency between episodes. Dreams reset, return to states, repeat scenarios with variations that the dreamer does not always notice. The town forgets because the dream requires it to forget, because the dreamer's mind cannot hold the accumulated weight of everything that has happened in Springfield without the structure collapsing. The principal and the pauper theory call it the Springfield consensus theory provides a third. The forgetting is not cognitive failure. It is civic decision. Springfield has developed, over its history, an institutional capacity for collective amnesia that it exercises deliberately and that is maintained by the social and legal infrastructure the show has built into it. The community forgets because it has decided to forget, and it punishes those who remember. Each theory is compatible with the others. They are not competing explanations. They are facets of the same phenomenon, each describing a different aspect of the same fundamental condition, that in Springfield, the gap between what is and what is claimed to be is permanent, maintained, and protected. The show has been telling us this since the beginning. In the first season, in the second, in the third, and the fourth, and every season since, the telling has been consistent. The evidence has accumulated, and the audience has watched, and the audience has accepted what the audience has seen, and the audience has returned next week to find Springfield exactly as it was left. We have been doing it too. We have been participating in Springfield's consensus. We have accepted the yellow skin and the four fingers. We have accepted the floating timeline and the reset button and the billionaire who will not die and the inspector who does not inspect. We have watched the three-eyed fish swim in the river and moved on to the next scene. We have been Springfield's audience and its mirror and its accomplice. We sat with Homer through his disasters and did not ask about the ones we already sat through with him. We watched the dome go up and we did not mention it when it was gone. We saw the skeletons in the basement and we kept watching. This is what it means to love a show for 36 years. Not just to watch it, but to participate in its logic, to accept its premises, to allow it to construct in you the same habits of selective attention that it has constructed in its characters. To become, in the way that a very long familiarity produces, a resident of Springfield yourself. Tonight, as you are drifting towards sleep, you are a resident of Springfield. You know the streets. You know the houses. You know the way the light looks on the cooling towers at dusk, the orange and the gray, and the way the smoke from them moves on a still day, slow and upward. You know the couch. You know the television. You know the sound of the opening theme, the particular quality of that music that is not just a signal that the show is starting, but a signal that the place is available, that Springfield is open, that the door at 742 Evergreen Terrace will yield to the familiar pressure of arrival. You have been coming here for a long time. The town is quiet tonight. The plant is running, but it is always running. The fish in the river have their usual number of eyes. Burns has taken his treatment and is glowing faintly somewhere in the building. Not dangerous, just sustained. Homer is on the couch, asleep before the credits finished. Marge has covered him with a blanket she keeps on the arm of the couch for exactly this purpose, has turned down the television volume, has stood for a moment in the doorway of the living room, looking at her family arranged in the blue light before going upstairs. Bart is in his room with the light still on, reading something that is not homework, occasionally laughing quietly at something he has not shared with anyone. Lisa is in her room with the saxophone case open on the floor, not playing, just sitting near it, the way you sit near something that is yours and that matters, the way the proximity itself is a kind of comfort. Maggie is in her room. Maggie's eyes are open. She is watching the light on the ceiling from the passing cars, each sweep of it marking the passage of time, slow and regular and quiet. She has been watching this light for 36 years. She has been watching everything for 36 years. Outside, the street is empty. The houses are dark, or the windows are lit, with the particular warm interior light of homes at rest. Ned Flanders's house is dark. He went to bed at a reasonable hour, said his prayers, and is now sleeping the sleep of someone whose conscience, whatever other burdens it carries, is clear. Moe's is closed. The sign in the window has been turned. The chairs are up on the bar, the last drink of the night has been poured, and the last customer has found his way home through whatever combination of habit and memory guides him there, and the street in front of the tavern is quiet. The power plant hums on the hill. The river moves. The impossible town, sitting on its impossible geography, in its impossible state, in its impossible climate, breathes the way towns breathe at night, a collective exhale, the cessation of the day's effort, the body of the community lying down in whatever peace it can find. The loop is running. It is always running. Tomorrow, Springfield will be exactly as it is tonight. The plant will still have its violations. Homer will still have the crayon. Burns will take his treatment. The vote to maintain the fiction will be held in the thousand small decisions that constitute the social life of a community that needs its story more than it needs its truth. And the couch will be there. The television will glow. The family will arrange itself. The show will not end. It will not end because we have not let it end. Because every time we have returned to it, we have extended it, held it in place, fed it the attention that is the only thing that can sustain a story across 36 years and counting. We built this loop. We maintain it. We tune in every week to make sure the walls are still standing. And the walls are still standing. They will be standing when you wake up. The house on Evergreen Terrace will be where you left it. Homer will be fine. Marge will have made breakfast. Lisa will have a saxophone. Bart will have a slingshot and a skateboard and the particular expression of a kid who has just thought of something that is going to cause a problem. Maggie will be watching. Springfield will be wherever it is. On the coast, in the heartland, near the mountains, near the desert, on the map, off the map, somewhere between Ohio and Oregon and Kentucky, and the fictional state NT that is not a real place by any measurement, and that is more real than most places you will ever visit. The gorge is there, in the dark, deep and still. The harbor is quiet, the plant is humming. You are somewhere in the town tonight as much a resident as anyone. You know these streets. You have always known these streets. Rest now. Springfield will keep. Bonus section. The specific strangeness of every Springfield institution. There is more to say about Springfield before the night fully closes. Every institution the town contains carries something of the town's essential quality, the slide between the functional and the impossible, the baseline strangeness that everyone inside it has stopped noticing. Springfield Elementary School is the institution that processes the children of the town and sends them out into the world as whatever they will become. It is run by Principal Tamzarian, who everyone calls Skinner, who maintains a daily relationship with Bart Simpson that is simultaneously adversarial and dependent. Neither of them fully exists in the show's social structure without the other. Skinner needs Bart to provide the problem that defines his role. Bart needs Skinner to provide the authority that his entire identity is organized around defying. The school itself is chronically underfunded. The episodes that address this are not satirical exaggeration. American public schools, particularly in communities where the primary industry is something like an unreliable or poorly regulated private facility, frequently face exactly this situation. The tax base that should support the school's operation is compromised by the behavior of the entity that should be generating it. Springfield Elementary runs on whatever is left after the power plant's accounting has been arranged to ensure that as little as possible ends up in public coffers. The result is a school that is recognizable to anyone who attended a school where the resources were thin. The textbooks are out of date. The equipment is insufficient. The teachers are trying within constraints that make trying difficult. The counselor, played across many seasons as a person who has been in the role so long that the distinction between professional response and conditioned reflex has dissolved, distributes advice that is a fair representation of what advice sounds like when it is delivered by someone who has heard the same kinds of problems for 20 years. There is something in Springfield Elementary that is specific to the show's particular period of origin. A 1990s American public school refracted through the particular lens of a show that was paying attention to what those schools were, what they asked of children, what they measured, and what they missed. Bart is not stupid. The show is clear about this. His scores are low. His engagement with the official curriculum is minimal. His relationship with the institutional measures of student value is adversarial. But the intelligence is there, visible in other contexts, available when the problem is one that matters to him. The school cannot find this intelligence because the school is not looking for it in the places where it lives in Bart. The school is looking for the intelligence that shows up in the designated places, the test, the assignment, the scheduled demonstration, and Bart's intelligence does not report to scheduled demonstrations. Lisa's intelligence does report to them. Lisa's intelligence is exactly what the school is structured to recognize, and it recognizes it. And the recognition does essentially nothing for Lisa because recognition in this school, in this underfunded institution, in this polluted town, does not produce the environment that her specific intelligence requires. She is recognized and then under-resourced. She is known to be exceptional and then given the same textbooks as everyone else. The school is a microcosm. Springfield General Hospital is where the town's illnesses are treated, where Homer has been brought more times than any medical facility should receive the same patient, where the quality of care is calibrated to what the community can pay, and what the professionals who work there have decided is worth doing in a town. That is what Springfield is. There are doctors in Springfield who are competent. The show does not present a uniformly incompetent medical establishment. It presents a medical establishment that operates within the specific constraints of its environment, which include the presence of a billionaire who maintains his own private medical infrastructure separate from the public health system, the general cognitive suppression of a population exposed to chronic low-level radiation, and the economic pressures of a community whose primary industry provides most of the cases that the hospital treats, while simultaneously resisting any investigation into why those cases present the way they do. The fire department. The police department under Chief Wiggum, who is to law enforcement what Homer is to nuclear safety present, officially credentialed, functionally absent. The city government, which has held elections and produced results that suggest the democratic process in Springfield, operates under some of the same constraints as everything else in the town. The church, Reverend Lovejoy, and the congregation that returns every Sunday with the persistent, muted hope that this week the sermon will be the one that makes everything make sense. It never is, but they come back. Faith is, in many of its expressions, the act of continuing to show up in the hope of receiving what you have not yet received, but have not quite given up on receiving. Moe's Tavern is the counter-institution. The church is where Springfield goes to find consolation in the formal structures of meaning. Moe's is where Springfield goes to find consolation in the absence of formal structures. In the dim light and the low expectations, and the company of men who are not asking anything of you beyond your presence and your order, both institutions serve the same need. The need to be somewhere with other people that is not home. The need for a context that is not the house and the family and the accumulated freight of the private life. The church and the bar are the town's two exits from the domestic, and the town uses both, according to temperament and occasion and how the week has gone. Springfield has a library that Lisa knows better than anyone else in town, a baseball stadium that occasionally has things happen in it that are worth mentioning, a country club that Burns belongs to and that the rest of the town approaches with the particular ambivalence of people who have been made to feel unwelcome in a place and who have not fully decided whether they want to be welcome there or not. There is a section of town that is not quite discussed but that is implied, the part of Springfield where things happen that do not happen on Evergreen Terrace, where different rules apply, where the show's geography and social structure shade into territory that the family-friendly framing keeps at a certain distance. The show has always known this part of the town is there. It has approached it occasionally and then stepped back. Springfield is a full town. A full town has every part. The monorail. In Season 4, Springfield received a monorail from a con man named Lyle Lanley, who sold the town on the idea with a song so effective that the entire community became temporarily incapable of critical thought. The monorail was a fraud. The infrastructure was inadequate. The result was a near disaster averted at the last minute by Homer, who was briefly the monorail's conductor. The monorail no longer runs. It sits somewhere in the town's geography as a monument to the particular vulnerability of communities that want things badly enough to stop asking questions about whether what they're being offered is real. Springfield wanted a monorail. A charming man showed up with a song. The town stopped asking whether the song was a substitute for a plan. The tire fire at the edge of town has been burning for years, possibly decades. The show drops references to it with the same casualness it drops references to everything about Springfield that should have been addressed long ago and has not been. The tire fire burns. The smoke from it joins the smoke from the cooling towers. The air in Springfield contains whatever the air in Springfield has always contained. The tire fire is not metaphorical, but it functions as one. There are problems in Springfield that have been burning for so long that no one thinks of putting them out anymore. They are part of the landscape. They are part of the air. The town has organized its life around the fact of them, the way you organize a house around a leak that you have decided is not worth fixing. Everything in Springfield works this way. Everything is slightly broken and has been slightly broken for long enough that slightly broken is the normal. The function happens despite the breakage. The institutions run despite the dysfunction. The family comes home to the house despite everything that is wrong with the town the house is in. And somehow, across 36 years, the slightly broken manages to be enough. The town persists. The family endures. Homer comes home. Marge is there. The kids are at the table or not quite at the table, in the vicinity of the table, moving through the kitchen in the way that families move through kitchens without intention, without destination, drawn by the same gravity that makes all the separate lives of the household orient toward the same center at the end of the day. The center holds. It has always held. Springfield is a broken town and a loving one. And the second thing is not despite the first. The love that exists in the show, the love between Homer and Marge and between the family and the town and between the show and its audience, it knows the breakage. It has always known it. It was made in full awareness of what Springfield is. And it returns every week to the house on the quiet street in the impossible town. And it sits down on the couch and it chooses to be here. The final drift. What Springfield is at night. Late now. The town is at its quietest in these hours, the specific quiet of a small city past midnight, when the commercial noise has stopped and the residential noise has not yet begun. The bars have called last drink. The convenience stores are open but empty, the fluorescent light inside them reaching out to the empty street, finding nothing to illuminate. The plant is still running. It always runs. The cooling towers are lit from below. The towers themselves dark shapes against the lighter dark of the sky, the plumes from them rising and dissolving, the same motion they have made every hour of every night since the facility was built. Whatever is happening inside the plant at this hour is happening without Homer, without any human agency at all, managed by the automated systems and the ongoing processes that do not require a person to initiate them or maintain them. They simply continue. The fish in the river are doing whatever fish do at this hour. Moving, probably, in the slow circles of creatures that are always moving, always tracing the same water they have always known, carrying in their biology the evidence of what that water contains. The third eye, on Blinky and on every descendant of Blinky, sees the dark from a third angle. This does not seem to bother them. Somewhere in the woods outside town, a path runs between the trees. Homer walked this path once, at night, and saw something glowing between the trunks. He ran. He told people. The FBI came. The investigation concluded. The woods at night are simply woods. The kind of woods that belong to a town on the edge of whatever landscape Springfield currently occupies, the trees that have been there since before the plant was built, since before the town was the town it currently is, they are doing what woods do at night, which is continuing. The gorge is there, somewhere past the highway, a crack in the earth that is deeper than it looks from above and quieter than it looks from beside it. The gorge does not make noise. It just exists. a gap in the landscape, patient and permanent, and entirely indifferent to the story it has been part of. The Simpson house has all its lights off now. Homer is on the couch because he fell asleep there, and Marge covered him with the blanket and decided the effort of waking him and getting him upstairs was not the hill she wanted to die on tonight. He is sleeping the particular deep sleep of someone who has exerted himself not in the ways that produce results, but in the physical expenditure of the day. The getting up and the driving and the sitting and the eating and the watching and the occasional motion, and his body, which has absorbed an extraordinary amount over its 39 permanent years, has chosen to cash out now, on this couch, with the television still warm behind him. He is dreaming. Whether the dream is the show or the show is the dream depends on which theory you are holding tonight. Marge is upstairs, awake for another few minutes in that half state that comes before deep sleep, aware of the house around her, aware of the street, aware of the specific quality of a house at rest that is known to anyone who has lived long enough in a house to be able to read its silences. The refrigerator cycling, the settling of the structure in the cooler air, the occasional car on the street outside. She is thinking something. The show does not tell us what. She thinks quite a lot that the show does not tell us. Bart has finally turned his light off. The book is closed on the floor beside the bed, face down, the way you leave a book when you plan to pick it up again tomorrow. He is sleeping the instant, total sleep of a child who has expended everything, whose body does not negotiate with the transition from awake to asleep, but simply crosses it when it comes. Lisa's lamp is still on. It is nearly always on past midnight. She is reading or writing or thinking, the activities blurring into each other at this hour the way they do when the difference between active processing and passive absorption stops being relevant. The saxophone is in the corner of the room. The books are in their places. The lamp is on. Maggie is watching the ceiling. The cars are fewer now, the sweeps of light from passing headlights spaced further apart. Each one crosses the ceiling and passes. Maggie watches each one. Her eyes track it. Her face is unreadable, because it is always unreadable, because 36 years of practiced opacity has made the unreadable the permanent expression. She is thinking something. She is always thinking something. The street is empty. The houses are dark, most of them. The particular darkness of residential streets at this hour, which is a different darkness from the darkness of open country, softer, warmer, broken by the occasional porch light left on for someone who has not come home yet, or as a habit of welcome that continues past the point where it is required. Ned Flanders's porch light is on. It was on when he went to bed and he forgot to turn it off, or he leaves it on deliberately, some residual hospitality that persists past consciousness. The light falls on the strip of grass between their houses, the boundary that Homer has transgressed and Ned has forgiven, the margin that both families have been navigating for 36 years. The town breathes. This is the thing about Springfield at night. The impossibility of it recedes. The three-eyed fish are in the dark water. The cooling towers are in the dark sky. The violations and the debates and the mysteries and the theories and the accumulated strangeness of 36 years of a town that cannot decide what state it is, in all of it is still there, but at this hour it is quiet. At this hour it is just a town. A town with houses on streets with lights in windows where people are sleeping and dreaming and lying awake and listening to the structure of the night. A town with a family at its center, imperfect and loving and damaged and whole, on a couch and in beds, in the particular proximity that is family not always comfortable, not always chosen in the active sense, but fundamental, the arrangement that the day disperses and that the night, reliable and patient, reconstitutes. The gorge is there. The harbor is quiet. The plant hums. The mountains are dark shapes. The desert is cool. Springfield is everywhere. Springfield is your town. It has always been your town. The yellow light and the blue hair and the couch and the television and the family that never ages and never leaves and never says goodbye, because in Springfield, goodbye is not something that happens, because in Springfield, the loop runs and the credits roll and the family sits down again at the start of the next episode. And the street is quiet, and the house is lit, and the door is open, and nothing has ended. Nothing has ended. The show will be here when you wake up. Springfield will be here. The couch will be there. Rest now. The town is keeping watch. This has been Springfield, seen from the inside, at the hour when it is most fully itself. Good night. Expanded Section 1. The geography revisited every street, every corner. Return to the geography one more time. You have heard the broad argument that Springfield's impossibility is intentional, that the show built a town that could be everywhere by refusing to be anywhere specific. That is the argument at its most compressed. But the geography deserves more time, more slowness, more of the particular attention that night allows when the pace of the day has finally released you. Think about what it means to know a town. Not know it in the abstract, not know it the way you know a city by its reputation or its famous landmarks, or the way it is described in the articles you read about it. Know it the way you know the place you grew up in, the way knowledge accumulates through years of repetition, through the specific texture of 1,000 unremarkable mornings and 100 particularly notable afternoons. You know the way the light changes at a specific corner at the end of October, how the particular angle of the afternoon sun at that time of year turns everything briefly gold before the shadows come in. You know which street floods when it rains in a certain way. You know which neighbor's dog barks at dusk, which houses have the particular smell of old wood, which storefronts have changed, and which have been the same thing for as long as you have been alive. This is the knowledge you have of Springfield. It accumulated without your noticing, across the years of watching, building in the peripheral awareness the way the knowledge of home builds not through study but through presence. You did not set out to learn Springfield. You simply spent time there, the way you spend time in a place, and the place entered you through the skin. The road from the highway into town, the particular curve of it, the way it descends from the overpass and the town opens up below, the power plant first, and then the neighborhoods spreading out and the school and the church and the shops along the main street. The drive has been made so many times, in so many episodes, that the sequence of it is in the body now, in the memory that is stored below the level of narrative recall, in the reflexive knowing that does not require remembering. There is a hill just before the school. The kids walk down it every morning, the same walk, the same backpacks and the same arguments and the same dynamic between Bart and Lisa that is adversarial on the surface and functional underneath. The walk has been made so many times in the show's history that it is part of the mythology of the place, not a dramatic event but a daily pattern, the ordinary motion that holds a life together. The school itself, seen in the morning from the road, the facade of Springfield Elementary, the institutional architecture of a building that was built for a purpose and that has been serving that purpose, imperfectly and with diminishing resources, for the entirety of the show's run. The flagpole in front, the steps that Bart has sat on, has been sent to stand on, has descended at the end of the day with the particular energy of a kid for whom school's out is one of the day's true pleasures. The back of the school has a playground. The playground has the equipment that school playgrounds have, the metal structures and the rubber surfaces and the particular smell of institutional outdoor spaces that anyone who attended a school in the 1990s will have stored somewhere in the body. The playground is where certain conversations happen that cannot happen in classrooms, the sideways disclosures of children who have not yet learned to frame the things they know. Across from the school, on the other side of the street, there is a park. The park has trees old enough to have been there when the school was built, old enough to have watched the neighborhood accumulate around them. The park has benches where the older residents of Springfield sit in the afternoons, the benches facing the street, watching the traffic. This is a form of civic life that the show depicts occasionally, and honestly, the observation function of the person who has been in a place long enough to have watched it change. The main street of Springfield is dense with the specific American commercial life of a town that still has locally owned businesses mostly. The show's Springfield predates or exists in a separate timeline from the full-scale arrival of the chains and the box stores that transformed American main streets in the decades the show has been running. The Quick E-Mart is a chain of sorts, a franchise, but it is run by a specific person in a specific way, and it has a specific quality that distinguishes it from the interchangeable convenience stores that dominate in reality. Apu, behind the counter. The specific light of the Quick E-Mart at night, visible from the parking lot, the fluorescent brightness that reaches out to the street and makes the store look more awake than anything nearby. The particular smell of a place that stocks every combination of product, the candy and the motor oil and the magazines and the dairy and the prepared foods sitting under the heated lamp, all of it in the specific compressed proximity of the convenience store, where every category of need is present and nothing is quite enough. The store has been robbed many times. Apu has been shot at and held at gunpoint and threatened in a dozen ways that the show treats as the background texture of retail life in a town like Springfield. He manages these events with the practiced equanimity of someone for whom the extraordinary has been absorbed into the ordinary through sheer repetition. The extraordinary things that happen to him are not less extraordinary because they happen often. They are simply part of the life. Continue down the main street. The barber shop, which has a particular kind of Springfield resident inside it. At most hours, the people for whom the barbershop is not just a place to have a haircut, but a context for the specific kind of conversation that is made possible by the combination of mild captivity and the trusted professional relationship. You cannot leave in the middle of a haircut. The person cutting your hair is someone whose skill you depend on and whose company you have chosen, at least by implication, to be in. This creates the conditions for a kind of talk that is different from the talk in the bar or the talk in the church hall. The barbershop hears things. The bowling alley, which occupies a certain specific cultural position in the show's rendering of Springfield's leisure life. Bowling in the American Midwest and in the broader American working-class culture that the show draws on is not merely recreation. It is a form of social ritual, a structured activity that provides the occasion for the less structured human interaction that happens alongside it. The bowling alley is where you can be with your friends for hours, nominally doing something, while actually doing what you are really there for, which is being together. Homer bowls. Not well, but with commitment. The bowling alley is one of the places in Springfield where Homer is fully himself in the specific, uncomplicated way that specific physical activities can produce, engaged in the task, present in the moment, not worried about the things that worry him elsewhere. The ball goes down the lane. The pins respond. The score is the score. There is something restful in the simplicity of that transaction. The bowling alley at night after the leagues have finished. The lanes empty, the scoring screens dark, the balls in their racks, the smell of the building, which is a specific smell that bowling alleys have, the machine oil and the rental shoe disinfectant and the concession stand and the old carpet, a smell that has been consistent for decades because bowling alleys have not changed much in the ways that produce smells. And that smell is therefore a kind of time travel, a sensory return to whatever decade you associate with the bowling alley smell. Springfield has a drive-in movie theater. The drive-in is one of the show's occasional settings, placed in episodes that need the specific combination of private space and public event that the drive-in provides you are in your car, which is your own territory, your own bubble of domesticity on wheels, and you are also in a field full of other cars, other bubbles, all of them pointed at the same screen, sharing the same story without sharing the space. The drive-in at night, the screen lit and the sound coming through the speakers, the cars arranged in their rows. From above, from a certain angle, the lot looks like a congregation, all those separate vehicles, all those separate lives, briefly organized toward a common point. This is what the drive-in does. It makes a community out of people who want to stay in their cars. The hospital sits on the edge of the downtown area, set back from the street, with a parking lot between the building and the traffic. The parking lot is always too small. This is a feature of hospitals rather than a bug demand exceeds capacity. The lot fills up. People park at the edges and walk across the landscaping. Springfield General is where Homer has been many times, where the show has used the emergency room as a setting for dozens of plots, where births have happened and recoveries have happened, and the particular rituals of the waiting room have been observed. The waiting room is one of the show's recurring institutional spaces, and it has a quality that all waiting rooms have: the suspension of ordinary time, the experience of being in a place where you cannot do anything but wait, where the thing you are waiting for is entirely outside your control. The waiting room is a place of radical patience. Springfield General's waiting room has held the Simpson family through various crises, and the image of them there, Homer restless, Marge holding herself still, Bart performing unconcerned, Lisa thinking, is one of the quietly recurring images of the show. The family arranged in its particular way under pressure, each person responding to the same situation differently, and all of them, underneath the different responses, doing the same thing, hoping, waiting, being there. The cemetery is on the quieter end of town, past the residential streets, at a point where the streets get less trafficked and the buildings are more spread out. The cemetery is old enough to have stones that predate the characters the show has introduced. It holds the long history of Springfield, The accumulated dead of a town that has been accumulating dead for longer than anyone currently alive has been there to know. There is a headstone in the cemetery that used to be passed off as Homer's mother's grave. The headstone belonged to a poet, and Abe Simpson, who had his reasons, showed his son this stone and told him it was his mother's. Homer visited that grave. He mourned at it. He stood in the cemetery and directed his grief at a piece of carved stone that had nothing to do with the woman he was grieving for. The cemetery holds that history. The stone is still there, presumably, in whatever continuity the show maintains between episodes. The stone that was a lie that was the shape of a grief that was real. Springfield has a mall. The mall appears in episodes that need the particular commercial landscape of the American shopping center, the food court, the anchor stores, the navigational anxiety of a space designed to make you lose track of where you are. The mall is a late capitalist geography that the show has used as a setting and as a target. The particular absurdity of a place designed to feel like a destination that is actually a box full of other boxes. There is a part of the mall where teenagers sit, which is a phenomenon that malls produced during their peak period, the mall as youth social space. The free climate-controlled territory where a person too young to have a bar could be somewhere other than home or school. The teenagers who sit in malls have specific social arrangements, specific hierarchies, specific ways of occupying the space that the mall did not design for but that emerged anyway. Springfield's teenagers, to the extent that the show depicts them, are doing the same things that teenagers everywhere have been doing for the duration of the show's run. This is part of what makes Springfield feel real. The teenagers are recognizable not because they are specific to Springfield, but because they are specific to a time in life that produces similar behaviors regardless of location. The water tower stands above the town, the word Springfield painted on it in the institutional lettering of municipal infrastructure. Homer once painted Marge's name on it. The name has been repainted or washed off by whatever processes water towers undergo, but the gesture remains in the show's memory. One of the clearer expressions of the way Homer's love for Marge is most visible precisely when it is most impractical. The water tower holds the town's water. It holds it above the town, at pressure, so that when someone in the furthest house from the tower turns on a tap, the water moves with sufficient force to reach them. The tower is the town's circulatory infrastructure, the thing that keeps the system pressurized. What the water contains is another matter. Past the town limits, in the direction of the Simpsons' house and then beyond it, the streets become quieter, the houses more spread out, the gaps between them larger. This is the residential fringe, the neighborhood that is not quite suburban and not quite rural, the in-between geography of the American town's edge. The edge of Springfield is where certain things happen that do not happen in the center. The gorge is accessible from here, a drive and then a walk through the trees. The plant is visible on the hill from this direction. The cooling towers above the tree line, the light from the facility reaching this far at night. The forest begins where the last houses end. The forest is old. The show does not specify how old, but the trees suggest an age that predates the town, predates the plant, predates the arrival of the characters and the stories that have been told in this geography. The forest was here before Springfield was Springfield. It will be here after. In the forest, at night, the particular silence of old trees. The sounds that are not silence, but that human hearing tends to classify as silence anyway, the wind in the upper branches, the settling and the small motions, the occasional creature moving through the undergrowth. The forest is alive at night in ways that it is not alive during the day, populated by the activities of animals that prefer the dark. And occasionally, on certain evenings following a particular medical appointment, a figure moving through the trees with a faint luminescence. Not an alien, not a ghost. Something more ordinary and more strange. The town is its own ecosystem. It has always been its own ecosystem, sealed in some sense from the outside by its geographic impossibility, by its resistance to being located, by the specific social contract that makes certain truths unsayable within its limits. What lives inside it, the people, the fish, the luminous rats, the ancient billionaire who can afford to keep himself alive, exists in relationship to what the town contains and what the plant produces. The ecosystem is damaged. The ecosystem is also vibrant, persistent, generative, full of love and stupidity and music and barbecue and the sound of children at the start of summer. Both things are true. They have always both been true. The town is the whole of what it is, and what it is includes the damage and the love equally, inseparably, the two things having been present together for long enough that they have grown into each other, are no longer distinguishable at the root. This is what it is to know a place. You know its geography, and you know its damage, and you know its love, and you know the smell of the barber shop and the light of the quickie mart at night, and the sound of the bowling alley, and the quiet of the cemetery, and the glow of the plant on the hill. You know it the way you know home. Expanded Section 2. Homer's jobs, every life he almost lived. In the ordinary structure of an American life, a person chooses a field, builds skills in that field, spends their working years in that field, and retires. The trajectory is a single long line, running from the first job to the last, accumulating knowledge and seniority and the specific authority of someone who has spent decades doing one thing. Homer Simpson has had dozens of jobs, possibly hundreds. The floating timeline and the episodic structure have permitted the show to reset Homer's employment situation whenever a plot requires it, dropping him into a new field with the same combination of enthusiasm and incompetence that he brings to everything, letting the episode play out the consequences, and then returning him to Sector 7G as if the interlude never happened. The result is a career that is, in its own strange way, a kind of portrait. Every job Homer has tried illuminates something about him, about what he wants, what he is capable of, when the situation is exactly right, what he cannot sustain because the sustainment requires things he does not have. He was a boxer. The episode in which Homer discovers a previously unknown capacity for absorbing punishment and turns it into a professional boxing career is both comedy and genuine melancholy, the image of a man who can take hits indefinitely, discovering that this is the skill the world will pay him for. He can be hurt. He can be hurt and keep going. He cannot necessarily win, but he can refuse to fall. And in the specific economy of certain kinds of suffering, the refusal to fall is its own form of victory. He was a food critic. This episode, perhaps more than any other, shows Homer at the intersection of his authentic desires and a professional opportunity. Homer loves food. Not as a refined pleasure, but as a fundamental one. The pleasure of someone for whom eating is the most available form of joy, reliable and immediate, and not requiring any particular cognitive architecture to access. Homer eating a donut is a portrait of pure sensory pleasure. Homer as a food critic is a situation in which his most genuine responses are professionally useful. He was in a band. He played in a band as a young man, before the show proper begins, and the show has revisited that period and that ambition across multiple episodes. The band, a nascent rock outfit called the B-Sharps, which later reformed as an a cappella group with a brief and improbable critical success, represents the version of Homer's life that moved in a different direction, the path not taken, the possibility that existed before the power plant closed around him. The B-Sharps had a moment. Their moment was brief, and it ended in a way that the show depicts with some rueful accuracy about how moments end not dramatically, not with a catastrophic falling out, but with the slow return of the ordinary, the gradual reassertion of the lives that existed before the brief, extraordinary period. People have mortgages. People have children. The window in which it is possible to pursue something extraordinary is narrow, and when it closes completely, and the people on the other side of it return to where they were. Homer made an album. He has a gold record somewhere in the house, presumably, a physical object that is evidence of the brief period when he was something other than the safety inspector in Sector 7G. He does not talk about it much. This is one of the show's quiet sadnesses, the things Homer might have been, the lives he almost lived, maintained as objects somewhere in the household, present but not discussed. He was a sanitation commissioner. This episode is beloved not just for the comedy of Homer's complete transformation of the town's trash collection system, an improvement followed by an immediate catastrophic failure, but for the image of Homer in a position of actual civic power, actually making decisions that affect the town, actually demonstrating that he has good instincts about certain things and no idea how to sustain those instincts past the initial enthusiasm. Homer's problem with jobs, and with sustained effort generally, is not the beginning. The beginning is often fine, even good. He approaches new situations with genuine enthusiasm, brings real energy to the initial phase, and in many cases produces early results that suggest the job might work. The problem is the phase that comes after the beginning, the phase where the enthusiasm has to convert into something that persists regardless of whether it is still fresh. Homer cannot convert, or he can convert, but only briefly. And then something else catches his attention, or the difficulty of the conversion becomes apparent, and the energy finds a different outlet. The plant is where he always returns, not because it is what he wants, but because it is what has him. The deal is there, the seed is there, the job exists for him regardless of what he does with it. It is the one professional structure in his life that is not contingent on his performance. And in a life where performance has never been reliable, contingent structure eventually proves impossible to maintain. He was a country music manager. He was a deep-sea fisherman. He was a chauffeur. He was a technical writer for nuclear facilities in other countries. He was a volunteer election official. He was a professional mascot. He was a motivational speaker, briefly and implausibly, and with results that were briefly extraordinary. Each of these jobs tells the same story from a different angle. A man with genuine capabilities, distributed irregularly across an enormous range of fields, none of them matching the field he actually occupies, all of them representing some version of the life he might have had if the conditions of his life had been different. The conditions were set before he was old enough to set them himself. The plant was waiting. The deal was in place. The crayon was in the brain, but the jobs are evidence of something, in their accumulation. They are evidence of a person who is genuinely curious about the world, genuinely interested in what different kinds of work feel like, genuinely drawn to the experience of doing something he has not done before, even if the interest rarely survives the first real difficulty. Homer does not try new things because he is ambitious. He tries new things because the newness is itself the draw. There is something in this that the radiation and the crayon do not explain. The curiosity is his. The openness to the world is his. The willingness to walk into a new situation and say yes before understanding what yes commits him to, that is the quality that makes Homer both the show's disaster engine and its most genuinely alive character. He says yes to almost everything, and the consequences are usually chaos. But the yes is real, and the openness behind the yes is real. And a person who has gone through the world saying yes to everything has experienced more of it, has been more places inside it, has collected more of its specific textures and sounds and smells than a person who has been more careful. Homer's life is wider than it should be for a man who has never left his job. 39 years old. Sector 7G. Hundreds of jobs. One couch, one house, one street, one woman, 3 children. The breadth and the narrowness coexist. They have always coexisted. The man who has done everything and the man who has done nothing are the same man, living the same life, finding the world extraordinary, and then going home to find the couch exactly where he left it. Expanded Section 3. Every Springfield event that should have changed everything. Springfield has experienced events that, in a town governed by ordinary narrative logic, would have permanently altered its character. Events that would have left marks, changed the social landscape, produced consequences that cascaded forward through the story. Events that would have been the thing that everything else was described as being before or after. The dome. In the Simpsons movie, the Environmental Protection Agency seals Springfield under a glass dome. This is not a minor incident. This is the federal government making a determination about an American town and acting on that determination in the most dramatic way possible. Physical containment, the town sealed off from the surrounding country, the residents confined within its borders, the outside world protected from what Springfield has become. The dome goes up, the town experiences it. The family plays a central role in the resolution of the crisis. Homer causes the crisis. Homer resolves the crisis, which is the show's most consistent dramatic structure applied at its largest possible scale. The dome comes down, and then it is not mentioned again. The next episode of the show proceeds as if the dome never happened. Not in the way that a show might revisit a major event through references and callbacks and the ongoing consequences of what occurred. In the way of Springfield, which is the way of a collective agreement that something did not happen combined with the structural memory impairment produced by 30 years of contaminated water. The dome is gone. The dome is not discussed. Springfield is open, the surrounding country is no longer protected from it, the EPA's determination that the town constitutes a hazard has been apparently reversed without explanation. Life continues. Before the dome, There was the episode where Springfield's entire police force was temporarily replaced by the National Guard. Before that, there was the episode where Burns literally blocked out the sun, not metaphorically, not as a temporary theatrical stunt, but actually, using a physical mechanism he had constructed for the purpose. The town experienced genuine absence of solar light. Every living thing in the town that depended on the sun for its metabolic processes was affected. Every plant in every garden, every solar-dependent organism in the river and the surrounding environment, every human face that turns toward the light without thinking about it, all of them felt the absence. The sun came back. The mechanism was destroyed. The episode resolved. The next episode, Morning Light, Couch Gag, Opening Theme, The Alien Invasion. The show has depicted what appears to be genuine extraterrestrial contact on multiple occasions, most notably in the Treehouse of Horror episodes, which exist in a separate continuity, but also in the canonical universe in ways that are harder to dismiss. The Springfield Files, which places Homer's encounter with the glowing Burns in a narrative structure that involves actual FBI agents, actual federal investigation, actual national attention. This episode treats the possibility of alien presence in Springfield with enough structural seriousness that the reveal of Burns feels both satisfying and slightly unsatisfying, because the investigation built up an expectation that the solution did not fully address. But even that episode ends and is not mentioned in the next one. There was the episode where Springfield seceded from the United States. This happened. The town's relationship with the federal government became, for the duration of a single episode, the relationship of an independent nation with its former parent country. The episode played out the implications with the cheerful commitment to absurdity that the show applied to all its most extreme premises. And then it was over, and Springfield was part of the United States again, and none of the characters mentioned that they had briefly been citizens of a sovereign microstate. These events accumulate differently once you understand Springfield's relationship with its own history. They are not accidents of the writing. They are not the result of showrunners failing to track continuity. They are the product of a deliberate choice, made across 36 seasons of storytelling, to privilege the episode over the continuity, to let each story be complete in itself, to allow Springfield to absorb any event and return to its essential condition, to protect the characters from the weight of consequence by ensuring that the weight is never allowed to settle. The effect is a town that is simultaneously the site of everything and the site of nothing. Everything happens in Springfield. Nothing sticks in Springfield. The events are real in the moment of their occurrence. The reality dissolves by the following week. This is the show's most powerful formal argument about the nature of American life. Not the satire of specific institutions or specific characters or specific political situations. The argument embedded in the structure itself. That American life resets. That the country has a remarkable capacity for absorbing disaster and returning to the posture of normalcy, for treating the catastrophe as something that happened, and then moving forward, as if forward is available regardless of what happened. Springfield is America concentrated. The dome went up and came down and no one mentioned it again. The sun was blocked and restored and no one mentioned it again. The town was destroyed and rebuilt and no one mentioned it again. This is not the behavior of damaged memories or collective denial, though the show uses both of those as explanations. This is the behavior of a culture that has made amnesia into a civic virtue, that has decided, at some level below the level of conscious policy, that the capacity to move on is more valuable than the capacity to reckon with what you are moving on from. Springfield moves on from everything. That is its superpower and its tragedy simultaneously. The superpower being, nothing can destroy it permanently. The tragedy being, nothing it has done to itself is ever fully addressed. The dome went up because of the pollution. The pollution came from the plant. The plant is still running. The dome is gone. The pollution continues. Moving on. The next episode begins. The opening credits play. Homer is driven into the frame by a nuclear rod and parks at the suburban house and runs inside. The family converges on the couch. The show begins. Everything is fine. Everything has always been fine. Springfield has decided. Expanded Section 4. The Sound of Springfield. There is a quality to the sound of Springfield that is worth sitting with before the night fully closes. Not the dialogue. The dialogue is its own archive. the collected words of 36 years of writing that has produced some of the most quoted lines in American television history, the specific phrases that have escaped the show and become part of the cultural air, recognizable to people who have never watched a single episode because they have heard them quoted in every other context. Not the dialogue, the ambient sound, the specific acoustic quality of the place. The hum of the power plant is a low frequency that you feel before you hear. It is the baseline of Springfield's sound environment, the continuous note beneath everything else, present in episodes set near the plant explicitly and implied in episodes set elsewhere in town by the fact that the plant is always running, always producing its low output, always sending its particular frequency into the surrounding environment through the ground and through the air. This kind of sound, low, continuous, produced by large machinery is the background of many American industrial towns. It is not consciously heard by the people who live in it. It is simply there, the way a river is there, the way wind is there, present without being noticed because it never stops, and the brain, which is designed to notice change rather than continuity, has long since stopped registering it as information. The river makes a different sound. The sound of the water moving over whatever the riverbed contains, the particular voice of a Springfield river that has been receiving the plant's outflow for decades. Rivers that receive industrial runoff have a specific sound, different from rivers that do not add density to the water, a quality of movement that reflects the altered chemistry of what the water has become. The fish in Springfield's river make their way through this sound, have always made their way through it, do not know any different water. The school bell. Springfield Elementary's bell rings at the same hours that school bells ring everywhere, marking the transitions of the school day with the institutional clarity of a sound designed to move large groups of people simultaneously. The bell cuts through the ambient noise of the schoolyard, through the particular sound of children in the period before school starts, that specific frequency of energy, voices and motion, and the social sorting that happens in the brief free time before structure asserts itself. Bart hears that bell differently from Lisa. For Bart, it is the sound of the day beginning in the wrong direction, the signal that the next several hours will be organized around demands that do not match his inclinations. For Lisa, it is the sound of something opening the school day as the structure inside which her intelligence has its most reliable outlet, even if the outlet is imperfect and the structure often inadequate to what she brings to it. The same bell, different hearings. The bowling alley has its own distinct sound environment. The particular crack of the ball meeting the pins, which is one of the more satisfying sounds in American recreational life, dense, percussive, the physical report of contact between a heavy object and a set of lighter ones, the cascade of the pins following from it, then the clatter settling, then the silence of the assessment 3 pins standing, or 5, or the perfect absence of any, and the sound of the scoring mechanism registering what happened. The bar has the sound of a bar at whatever hour the show places you in it. The sound of bottles and glasses and the particular ambient register of voices in a space designed to hold and slightly muffle conversation, the walls absorbing some of the sound, the low ceiling keeping it contained. Moe's is a sound environment that is specifically that bar, identifiable by the specific combination of the sounds and the mood they produce. There is no music in Moe's, generally. This is a choice. The bar that plays music creates a certain kind of atmosphere, an atmosphere in which the music provides something to relate to collectively, a shared reference point that is not the conversation. The bar without music asks you to produce your own sound. Everything in Moe's is either the sound of the patrons or the sound of the bartender, and the absence of any other sound is part of what makes the place feel both comfortable and slightly sad. The sound of the Simpson house in the morning is different from the sound of the Simpson house at night. Morning is the sound of converging the multiple sleep-to-wake transitions happening in separate rooms, the sounds of the bathroom and the kitchen, the voices emerging from sleep roughness into the day's register, the particular sound of cereal and the television in the background, and the front door opening and closing as children leave. Night is the sound of dispersing. The family coming apart into its separate rooms and its separate sleeps, the sounds of the house quieting by degree, the television being turned down and then off, the last sounds of activity giving way to the sounds of rest, which in the Simpson house include Homer's particular brand of breathing and the occasional sound of Bart's activities, which have a quality at night that suggests he does not fully sleep the way other people sleep. The saxophone. Lisa's saxophone, specifically. There is a particular emotional response that the saxophone produces that no other instrument quite replicates, something in the combination of its timbre, which sits in the register of the human voice, and its capacity for extended melodic lines, which gives it a quality of speaking, of narrating, of going somewhere with sustained intention. When Lisa plays, even in the brief musical moments that the show gives her, the sound has the quality of testimony, of a particular person saying something true in the only language that is adequate to what she is saying. The saxophone in Lisa's room, late at night, the window slightly open, the sound moving out into the yard, into the air above Evergreen Terrace. The neighbors can probably hear it. They have always been able to hear it. In all the years of Lisa's practicing, in all the late nights and early mornings when the music needed to come out regardless of the hour, Springfield has been receiving this sound. The sound of a child who understands too much, finding the only expression that can hold it. There is also the sound of Maggie's pacifier. The rhythmic suction of it, the particular sound that has accompanied every moment of Maggie's on-screen existence, that is so thoroughly associated with her presence that its absence in a scene signals her absence. The pacifier makes a sound, and the sound says, "Maggie is here. Maggie is present. Maggie is watching." The sound of Springfield is the sound of American life compressed into one impossible town. The industrial hum, and the school bell, and the bar without music, and the bowling alley, and the saxophone, and the pacifier, and the river with its altered chemistry, and the plant on the hill that never stops. It is the sound of home. Expanded Section 5. The couch, the axis of the world. There is a couch. It sits in the living room of the house, at 742 Evergreen Terrace, facing a television, under the particular light that the living room has in the evenings when the day's brightness has faded and the lamp is on, and the television provides its ambient blue glow. The couch is the axis on which the show turns. Every episode begins with it. In a variant of the same scene, the family arriving at the couch from different directions, converging on it, sitting down, becoming the arrangement that is the show's most essential image. The couch gag is technically a formal element of the opening credits, a joke or a piece of abstract animation or an elaborate visual construction that varies from episode to episode, that has become its own tradition, a tradition that has extended across 36 years and hundreds of variations, and that fans track and catalog and rank with the particular obsessive care that people bring to the things they have loved for a very long time. But the couch, underneath the gag, is the real thing. The couch is what the opening sequence is always arriving at the family, together, on the couch. Whatever happened before the credits, whatever is going to happen in the episode that follows, there is this moment. 5 people on a couch, the television on, the living room around them. The couch is the emotional center of gravity of the show. Every episode that takes the family away from this center is an episode about the experience of being away from it. The returns matter because the departures do. The couch is the thing that is returned to, always, by the end of the episode, by the structure of the story, by the persistent logic of a show that has decided, at its core, that the family together is the point toward which everything else moves. Homer on the couch is Homer at his most unremarkable and his most fully himself. He is not performing at the couch. He is not being the safety inspector or the boxer or the food critic or any of the other hundreds of professional identities the show has tried him in. He is simply a man on his couch, in his house, with his family, watching television. This is what he wants, this specific thing, not wealth or status or the vindication of the dozen grievances the world has given him. The couch, the family, the television, the beer on the side table, the evening, unremarkable and complete in itself. The couch absorbs everything. Homer falls onto it from the ceiling in some openings, lands on it after physics-defying approaches, is incorporated into it in some of the more surreal variants of the gag. The couch receives him. The couch has always received him. Whatever the episode has done to him, whatever the plot has required, the couch is there at the end of it. The couch has a color that has been consistent across the show's run, a particular shade of red or brown depending on how the episode's color grade sits, that has become as familiar as the yellow of the family's skin. You could not describe the couch precisely, but you would recognize it instantly. This is the kind of knowing that accumulates without effort, the absorption of a detail so thoroughly repeated that it becomes part of the internal landscape. Marge sits at the end of the couch that is nearest the kitchen, which is not always the same end depending on the gag's requirements, but which is her position in the canonical arrangement within reach of the household functions she manages, present in the family space but with one orientation toward the logistics. Lisa sits upright. Lisa always sits upright on the couch. There is something in her posture, even in the relaxed context of television watching, that resists the collapse into comfortable horizontality. She watches whatever is on with the same alert engagement she brings to everything. She is resting but not inattentive. Bart is usually horizontal, or close to it, occupying more of the couch than his size strictly requires, the sprawl of a kid who has decided that the couch is his and that the family arrangement should accommodate this decision rather than the other way around. He is watching the television, but he is also, always, aware of what everyone else is doing, ready for the next thing, already thinking about the thing after that. Maggie is in the center, or wherever she happens to have been placed, compact and self-contained, her eyes on the television or on the family or on the window or on whatever has caught her attention in this particular moment. She is always watching something. Tonight the television, tomorrow something else, and Homer, sinking into the cushions, the weight of the day releasing into them, the particular quality of a man who has finished with the things that the day required and is now doing the thing that the day was for. He watches television. He does not always watch it intelligently or critically or with the sustained attention that the medium sometimes asks for. He watches it the way you watch something you are comfortable with, something familiar, something that requires nothing from you and gives you the particular rest of the visual and the auditory without asking for the critical. The television shows Springfield things. News that concerns Springfield. Stories that reflect Springfield. And sometimes, famously, futures that turn out to be Springfield's future, though the mechanism by which this happens is understood differently depending on which theory you are holding. Tonight, the television is on. The sound is low. The light from the screen is moving across 5 faces. The couch holds. It has always held. Final section. What we built when we built Springfield. Let us be honest about something. Springfield is a fiction. It exists in the way that fictions exist in the minds of the people who made it and the minds of the people who received it, in the accumulated layers of memory and association that 36 years of storytelling have produced. It is not a place you can visit. There is no address. There is no drive from anywhere that ends in Springfield, and yet you know it. You have always known it. The house and the street and the couch and the cooling towers on the hill, the barber shop and the bowling alley and the bar. The saxophone in the yellow room and the pacifier in the quiet room and Homer's voice calling from somewhere downstairs. A sound that is as familiar as the sound of your own name being called in a house where you grew up. This is what the show built, over 36 years, without announcing what it was building. Not a cartoon, not a satire, though it is those things too. A place. A real place, in the only sense that places are real, which is the sense of having a shape in someone's memory, of occupying coordinates in someone's internal geography. Springfield exists in you. That is the trick. The long, patient, 36-year trick that the show pulled without ever explaining what it was doing. It built itself into you, detail by detail, episode by episode, year by year, until the details accumulated past the point of conscious retention and became something more fundamental, something below memory. Something that responds to the opening theme not with recognition. Recognition requires a moment of comparison, a brief experience of something as new before the familiar registers, but with something that precedes recognition, something more like return. You go back to Springfield the way you go back to a place that was yours, not visiting, returning. The show understood this. The writers understood it, the producers understood it, the animators who have been drawing the same house on the same street for 36 years understood it. They were not just making episodes. They were building a home. They were building a home that would belong to the audience in the specific way that homes belong to people who have spent enough time in them to stop noticing them consciously and start carrying them internally. This is what they were doing. They built a couch and put a family on it and invited you to sit with them. And you did. And you kept coming back. And the accumulation of all the times you came back is Springfield. Your Springfield, the one that lives in you, built from everything you absorbed in all the years of watching. It is made from Homer falling. It is made from Marge holding. It is made from Bart's spray paint and Lisa's saxophone and Maggie's careful, considering eyes. It is made from the opening theme and the cooling towers and the gorge and the impossible geography and the floating timeline and the vote to maintain the fiction and the skeletons in the basement and the crayon in the brain and the mother who was alive all along. It is made from everything that is strange about Springfield and everything that is ordinary, and the way the strange and the ordinary sit together in it without friction, because they have always sat together, because Springfield decided early on that the extraordinary is simply the ordinary wearing different clothes. The fire burns at the edge of town. The plant hums. The fish swim. The family is on the couch. This is home. This is what 36 years of Tuesday nights and Sunday nights and Netflix afternoons and childhood memories and adult comfort watching have built. A place, a real place, yours, and tonight you are in it. The street is quiet. The house is lit from inside. The family is arranged in the blue glow of the television, not going anywhere, not changing, not growing older. They are exactly as you left them. They will be exactly as you left them when you come back. The loop is running. It will keep running. Homer is on the couch. Marge is there. The kids are where they always are. Maggie is watching. The plant hums on the hill. The river moves in the dark. The impossible town breathes in its impossible location, in its impossible climate, under its impossible skies. The gorge is deep and still. The harbor is quiet. The trees in the forest are old, and they are breathing, and the night is settled around them, and the town is settled beneath them, and you are settled in the night, and the night is settled around you, and everything that is difficult about the day has gone somewhere else for now, has agreed to wait until morning, has decided that this particular hour belongs to the quiet and the soft light and the low sound of a show you have loved for a very long time. The couch is there. It is always there. Rest now. Springfield is keeping watch. Good night from Springfield. Whatever time it is where you are, whatever is waiting for you on the other side of this, it will wait. The town will be here. Deep section. Every relationship that makes Springfield feel like a town. A town is its relationships, not its geography, not its institutions, not the architecture of its public spaces or the design of its streets. The geography and the institutions and the architecture are the containers. The relationships are what fills them. Springfield's relationships are the show's most sustained achievement. Not the big ones, the central relationships, Homer and Marge, Homer and Burns, Bart and Lisa, though those are real and built with real care. The smaller ones, the relationships that exist in the background, that are implied rather than narrated, that have accumulated over 36 years of shared space. Ned Flanders and Homer Simpson have been neighbors for the entirety of the show's run. The relationship between them is one of the show's central jokes and one of its central emotional situations, and the two of those things are not in conflict. The joke, Homer, is exactly the kind of neighbor that Ned's particular psychology cannot respond to adequately, because Ned's conditioning prevents him from expressing the frustration that Homer perpetually earns. And the gap between the frustration he feels and the grace he expresses is the comedy, the emotional situation. Two men who have been neighbors for 36 years, who have shared a fence and a street and a community, who have each, in their way, needed the other. Homer needs Ned's tools and Ned's patience and Ned's basic goodwill toward the world, which functions as a kind of ambient warmth that the neighborhood benefits from. Ned needs Homer's permission to be occasionally imperfect. Homer, who is imperfect constantly and without apparent concern, provides Ned with evidence that imperfection does not result in expulsion from the community. They are not friends in the conventional sense. Their social world is organized differently. Their values are in conflict on a dozen axes. Their understanding of what a good life looks like is almost entirely divergent, but they are something. Something that does not have a clean name, but that is made of proximity and time, and the accumulated weight of having been present at each other's significant moments. Ned was present for Homer's disasters. Homer was present, in his way, for Ned's. When Ned's wife died, Homer's casual selfishness in that moment directly contributing to the accident, Homer was there. Not adequately there. Not in the way that the situation required, but there in the sense of being in the vicinity and being aware of what had happened and being somewhere underneath his ordinary incomprehension. The relationship between Homer and his co-workers at the plant is a different texture. Lenny Leonard and Carl Carlson, Homer's closest friends at the facility, have been in his professional life for the entirety of the show's run. They drink with him at Moe's. They attend the various social events that Homer's life produces. They are present in the way that people who share a physical space for 40 hours a week are present, with the particular quality of workplace friendship closer than acquaintance, more durable than circumstance, built from the specific intimacy of shared professional experience rather than chosen personal compatibility. The workplace friendship is an underexplored form in most narratives because it is unglamorous. It is not the grand friendship of shared adventure or the deep friendship of shared crisis. It is the friendship of the break room and the parking lot, of the two people who happen to be compatible enough to choose each other's company in the intervals between work. It is friendship made from proximity and repetition, and the particular relief of having someone in the same difficult situation who understands the specific difficulty. Lenny and Carl have been in the same difficult situation as Homer for 36 years. The situation being, employed in a facility that should be shut down, doing jobs that may or may not be functional, in a town that has organized its collective psychology around not asking questions about any of it. They manage. Marge's relationship with the neighborhood women, the social world that exists alongside but separate from Homer's, is depicted less consistently but with equal reality when the show turns its attention to it. The women of Springfield's residential community have their own networks, their own dynamics, their own understanding of who everyone is and what their situation consists of. Marge is part of this network in the specific way of someone who is more private than social, who participates in the community's social life from a position of engaged observation rather than full immersion. She knows her neighbors. She knows their situations, has been present at their significant events, has the accumulated knowledge of someone who has been paying attention to the people around her for decades. This knowledge informs the way she moves through the community, the way she navigates the town's social life, the way she understands what is happening around her. The kids at Springfield Elementary have their own social world, which the show depicts with considerable accuracy about the way children's social worlds work. The hierarchies and the alliances and the shifting loyalties, the way a single week can transform the social landscape of a fourth-grade classroom, the particular cruelties that children are capable of, and the particular kindnesses that surprise you when they appear. Bart's position in this world is complicated. He is popular in the sense of being known and attention-attracting, but his relationship with the school's institutional life places him outside the framework that defines acceptable popularity. Lisa is outside the social world in a different way. She is excluded rather than positioned outside by choice, which is a distinction that matters. Bart has decided to occupy the margins. Lisa would prefer the center, but the center has decided it has no room for her. These are different experiences of the same geographic location, marginality, and they produce different psychological responses. The show has been honest about this distinction across its run, and the honesty of it is one of the ways that the show earns the emotional weight it occasionally carries. There is a web of relationships in Springfield that extends far past the Simpson family, and that constitutes the town's actual social reality. The Bouvier family, Marge's relatives who represent a different version of what Marge might have been in different circumstances. The Flanders boys, Rod and Todd, who are being raised with the same behavioral modification that shaped their father, who are already exhibiting the specific quality of children whose emotional range has been constrained by parental expectation, who are kind and slightly strange and perhaps carrying forward the pattern that made Ned who he is. Principal Skinner and Superintendent Chalmers, locked in a professional relationship that is also, in its way, a study in the gap between institutional aspiration and institutional reality. Chalmers arrives to inspect, to evaluate, to apply the standards that the educational authority he represents is supposed to uphold. Skinner manages the inspection, which means managing Chalmers' perception of the school rather than managing the school itself. The visits are a performance of institutional adequacy rather than evidence of it. But underneath the performance, there is something real in their relationship too. Chalmers and Skinner have been in this dynamic for so long that the dynamic has become its own kind of relationship, with its own history and its own expectations and its own occasional moments of genuine connection beneath the adversarial surface. Every relationship in Springfield has this quality. The surface is what the show usually shows you: the joke, the conflict, the comic dynamic. Underneath the surface is the accumulated weight of shared time, of decades of proximity, of the specific knowledge that comes from being in each other's presence for long enough that you stop being strangers in any meaningful sense, even if the friendship was never formally declared. This is what towns are made of. This is what 36 years of episodes have built, almost accidentally, almost as a side effect of doing the same characters the same way for long enough. A genuine social world, dense with actual relationships, actual histories, actual knowledge of who everyone is. You know these people. Not as well as you know the Simpsons, but you know them. You know Apu, and you know Mo, and you know Ned, and you know Principal Skinner, and you know Chief Wiggum, and you know Sideshow Bob, and you know Krusty, and you know Comic Book Guy, and you know Reverend Lovejoy, and you know Dr. Nick, who will see you now, and you know Hans Molman, who is having a terrible day and will continue to be having a terrible day. You know them the way you know the people in a town you grew up in. Not their full stories, not their inner lives, not the full history of who they are, but their shape, their place in the social landscape, the particular role they play in the ecology of the place. Springfield is populated. It has been populated for 36 years, and the population has accumulated in you over all that time, and tonight, in the quiet of wherever you are, these people are with you. The town is full of them. The town is full. Deep section. Every moment of genuine beauty in the show. The show is funny. That is its primary mode, the register it occupies for most of its run, the relationship it has with its audience for most of the time. You come to be amused. You stay because the amusement has been reliable for longer than most other sources of amusement in your life. But the show is also, occasionally and without apology, genuinely beautiful. The beauty arrives without warning. It is not flagged. The show does not lower its voice or shift its register to signal that something significant is approaching. It simply happens in the middle of an episode that has been operating as comedy. In the space between one joke and the next, something opens, and what is inside it is real, and it lands before the comedy can reassert itself. The episode where Homer calls a 976 number a psychic hotline, the specific form of aspiration and isolation that existed in the 1990s, because he is lonely, and the voice on the other end is warm and available at 3 in the morning. The image of Homer, in the kitchen in the dark, talking to a stranger because the strangers are the only ones awake, the family asleep upstairs, the house quiet around him. The loneliness of that image is not played for comedy, and it is not treated as tragedy. It is simply shown. Homer is alone in the dark, and he found someone to talk to, and the talking matters to him. The episode where Homer makes Lisa a garden from the things he found while walking around the neighborhood. Not a good garden. Not a beautiful garden. A collection of found objects arranged with the aesthetic judgment of a man who does not have aesthetic judgment, but who has something else, who has the desire to give his daughter something that is entirely from him, not bought, not borrowed, made from what he had and what he could find. The garden is imperfect. The gesture is complete. The episode called Doin' in the Wind, where Homer traces his hippie years and finds a moment of genuine peace in a field with a quality of light that the animation renders with unusual care, a warmth and a spaciousness that is different from the show's usual visual texture, that feels like a memory of a moment when the world was exactly right. The show has dozens of these moments, not hundreds. The show is not primarily a show about beauty, but the dozens are real, and they are among the most powerful things the show has ever produced, precisely because they arrive without warning in a context that has not prepared you for them. The beauty of Homer and Marge's relationship is accumulated rather than stated. It is in the specific way that Homer looks at Marge when she is not looking at him, the expression that the show has given him in those moments that is different from every other expression. Homer makes not the delight at a donut, not the alarm at a crisis, not the confusion in the face of complexity. Something softer and more private, the look of a person contemplating something they value beyond their capacity to articulate the value. The beauty of Lisa's music is not always in the musical moments themselves, though those are beautiful. It is in the moments before and after the music, the moment when Lisa picks up the saxophone, the settling into the connection with the instrument, the breath before the note, and the moment after, when the music has done what music does and Lisa is in the specific stillness that follows the expression, the quiet that is different from silence because something has just happened in it. The beauty of Bart's occasional vulnerability. The show has been careful not to make Bart consistently vulnerable, because vulnerability is not his primary characteristic, and a consistent vulnerability would betray something essential about who he is. But the moments when it appears when something has happened that breaks through the performance of carelessness and reaches whatever is underneath those moments are among the show's most quietly devastating. The beauty of Springfield itself, in certain light, at certain hours. The show's animation has evolved across 36 years, and the earlier seasons had a visual texture that was rougher and warmer, a quality that the later seasons' cleaner animation cannot quite reproduce. The early Springfield, in the yellow light of season 1 and 2, had a particular quality of realness to it, a visual weight that made the impossible feel inhabited. There is a shot, somewhere in the first 2 seasons, of the Simpson house from outside at night. The windows are lit. The family is visible through the glass, moving through the ordinary evening activities of the household. The camera holds on this image for a moment longer than it needs to for narrative purposes, long enough to allow the image to be what it is, rather than only what it is for. The house from outside at night, lit and inhabited, the family inside. This is a beautiful image. It is beautiful in the way that ordinary things can be beautiful when they are held still for long enough to be looked at properly. The house is not extraordinary. The family inside it is not extraordinary. The light in the windows is the light of a house where people are, which is the simplest possible form of domestic evidence. It is beautiful. The show has been making moments like this, quietly and regularly, for 36 years. The moments are scattered through the episodes, not signposted, not highlighted. They are simply there, available to anyone who was watching when they happened. You may have been watching. You may have a version of one of these moments stored somewhere, the specific image or the specific exchange or the specific quality of light in a scene from an episode you watched years ago, stored without your knowing it was stored, available in the way that stored things are available, not retrievable on demand, but present, showing up in the peripheral vision of memory when conditions are right. Tonight might be conditions right. The house in the dark, the windows lit, the family inside. Everything the show has ever been about visible in a single image of unremarkable domestic warmth, which is the only warmth that has ever been available to most human beings most of the time. The warmth of the place where the people you love are, lit and occupied and yours. Beautiful. Final section. The long quiet at the end of the day. There is nothing left to do tonight except be somewhere. The day has been whatever the day has been. Whatever it required of you, whatever it produced, whatever version of the world it presented for your consideration, it is behind you now. It has gone to wherever days go when they finish, into the archive that exists just below the level of immediate recall. In the vast library of days you have lived that forms the background of who you currently are. Tonight you are in Springfield. Or you are somewhere else, and Springfield is with you, the way it has been with you since the first time you watched the opening credits, and the opening credits became familiar, and the familiar became comfortable, and the comfortable became part of the internal landscape. You know the sound of the opening theme. You know what it means, that specific sequence of notes, the particular way it accelerates at the end, the image of the family converging on the couch, each arriving from a different direction, each absorbed into the domestic arrangement that is the show's thesis statement. Together, on the couch, home. The cooling towers are out there, in the dark of the Springfield night, sending their plumes into the sky. They have been doing this continuously. They will be doing this when you wake up. The plant does not sleep. The plant does not stop. Whatever the plant is producing tonight, it is producing it in the same quantities it has always produced it, with the same violations unaddressed, the same inspector at home on his couch. The river moves. The fish do whatever fish do. The gorge is deep and still and entirely indifferent to the theories that have been assembled about its significance. The harbor holds its boats in the quiet water. The mountains are dark shapes at the edge of the visible world, present and enormous and not saying anything. Evergreen Terrace is quiet. The house is dark or nearly dark. The lamp in Lisa's room may still be on. It often is. The lamp in Lisa's room is a kind of signal. It means the mind in that room is still working, still reaching, still not quite ready to accept the verdict of the day and set down the thinking until morning. The lamp in Lisa's room is the show's image of persistence, of the quality that does not yield easily to the demand for rest. But even Lisa, eventually, turns off the lamp. The lamp goes off. The street is dark. The plant hums. The family is arranged in their beds or on the couch or wherever the night found them, in the specific configurations of rest that have accumulated over 36 years of the same people sleeping in the same house. The patterns as fixed now as the furniture, the specific shape of Homer's sleep and Marge's sleep, and the different shapes of the children's sleep, each one a particular expression of the person who is doing it. Homer's sleep is heavy. He goes down fast and deep and stays there. The particular kind of sleep that belongs to a person who has expended themselves completely and does not hold anything in reserve for the night. Whatever Homer's body is doing when he sleeps, it is not partially watching. It is not monitoring. It is simply not present in the way that wakefulness is present. Marge's sleep has a different quality. She is not entirely absent. She maintains some thread of connection to the house, even in sleep, the monitoring function that has been built into her life over decades of being the person who notices things. If something happens in the house at 3 in the morning, Marge is more likely to know about it than Homer is. Bart's sleep is unpredictable. Some nights deep, some nights light, some nights not quite sleep, but the particular adolescent semi-wakefulness that is neither full rest nor full presence. The mind, in those states, running its own simulations, working through whatever the day put in it, producing the specific dreams that a 10-year-old boy's mind produces, which are more various and more vivid than most adults remember theirs being. Lisa's sleep, when it comes, is organized around the thinking that preceded it. She carries the day's considerations into the night in a way that can make sleep difficult, and can make the early hours of morning, when the thinking finally releases, particularly productive. Some of her best ideas arrive in that liminal space between sleep and waking, the space where the mind is simultaneously free of the day's structure and still in contact with the day's materials. Maggie's sleep is impossible to characterize. She is 1 year old and she is not 1 year old. She is the most mysterious member of the family, and her relationship with sleep is presumably as opaque as her relationship with everything else observed, not explained, full of information that she has decided to retain. The town sleeps around the family. The whole of Springfield is in its nightly configuration, the bars closed and the schools empty, and the plant running, and the cemetery quiet, and the river moving, and the bowling alley dark, and Moe's locked, and the quick E-Mart lit and empty. The whole of it present all at once, in the night that belongs to all of it equally. This is the thing about a town at night. During the day, the town is its parts, this building and that street, and the people moving between them, the activity that makes the activity visible. At night, the parts recede and the whole becomes available. You can feel the town as a single thing, as a presence, as the weight of all the people in it breathing in their particular corners, all the lives suspended in their individual rests, all the accumulated history of the place present simultaneously in the dark. Springfield's history is long and strange and full of the specific accumulations of a place that has been running for 36 years through every kind of event and that has absorbed all of it, forgotten most of it, and kept going regardless. The history is in the buildings, in the walls of the elementary school that have heard 36 years of the same bell, in the floor of Moe's that has received 36 years of the same transactions, in the couch at 742 Evergreen Terrace that has held the same family through every episode, every crisis, every disaster, every joke, every moment of unexpected beauty. The couch holds the history too. You cannot see it. You cannot sit on it, cannot verify its texture, cannot measure the specific compression of its cushions that 36 years of a family sitting on it would produce in a physical object. The couch is fictional, but the history it carries is not exactly fictional. The history is made from what you remember, and what you remember is real, and the object that holds your memory of it is real in the only sense that objects of that kind can be real. The couch is yours. Springfield is yours. The family is yours. They have been yours since the first time you watched the opening credits, and they have been accumulating in you ever since, episode by episode, year by year, and tonight they are with you in the dark, in whatever room you are in whatever quiet has come to meet you at the end of this particular day. Rest now. The plant hums. The river moves. The family is on the couch. Everything is exactly as you left it. Everything will be exactly as you left it when you come back. This is the promise Springfield makes and has always made and has kept, across 36 years of keeping it, through every disaster and every reset and every impossible event that the town absorbed and forgot. The promise is simple. We will be here. We will always be here. Homer will be on the couch. Marge will be beside him. Bart will be somewhere he should not be. Lisa will be somewhere she is trying very hard to improve. Maggie will be watching. The town will be impossible and beloved and exactly itself. And you will be welcome in it whenever you arrive. Good night. The extended Springfield. Every corner of the town you have not yet visited tonight. There are parts of Springfield that the show visits rarely but that exist, in the town's logic, permanently. They are there between episodes. They are there during episodes in which they do not appear. They are part of the geography even when the camera is somewhere else. The Springfield Museum of Natural History. In the episodes that use it as a setting, it has the specific quality of American natural history museums in mid-sized cities, not the grand national institutions with their towering dinosaur skeletons and their marble halls, but the earnest regional version, the collection assembled from whatever the region produced and whatever donation came in, housed in a building that was once something else and converted, the conversion evident in the way the spaces don't quite fit the exhibits. Museums at night have a particular quality, the permanent dark of a building that is full of things that are not alive and that are arranged for viewing by people who are not currently present. The exhibits in their cases, the dioramas with their frozen scenes, the skeletons of animals, not the kind in Burns's basement arranged to suggest the animals they were, the bones holding their shape without the muscle and the skin that once gave them meaning. A museum at night is a place where the past is stored. Springfield has a past too extensive to remember and a museum too small to contain it, and the excess of the past that does not fit in the museum is distributed across the rest of the town, in the buildings and the streets and the plants that contain it. The Springfield Library is a place Lisa knows better than anyone else who is currently alive in the town. She has read things in that library that the librarians may not know the library contains. She has traced arguments through shelves of books that have not been disturbed since they were shelved. She has spent the specific quality of time that libraries produce absorbed time, time that moves differently than the time outside, slower and denser and organized around the page rather than the clock. The library at night is sealed and dark and full of the knowledge it contains, all of it waiting. Every book that Lisa has not yet read. Every book that no one in Springfield has read, that arrived and was shelved and has been waiting since for the reader who needs it. Libraries are patient in this way. The books do not require anything from you. They are simply available whenever you decide to arrive. The Springfield Retirement Castle is where Abe Simpson lives, or where he spends much of his time, in the company of people who are approximately his age and who have arrived at the stage of life where the institution is what they have. The retirement home is one of the show's quieter settings, the place where certain uncomfortable truths about American life are present without being explicitly stated: the isolation of the old, the specific loneliness of people who have been moved from the context that defined them to a context that is defined primarily by the fact of their age. Abe is lonely. Not always. Not in the episodes where Homer comes to visit, where the connection between them, imperfect and historically complicated, provides company. But baseline, in the structure of his situation, Abe is lonely. He has stories, enormous, sweeping, improbable stories from a life that spanned historical events he will not stop describing, stories that his son and grandchildren have heard so many times that the hearing has become a form of background noise. The stories are real. The history in them is real. Abe was there. No one is listening in quite the right way. This is not anyone's fault. It is the specific tragedy of the very old in American culture, which has organized its relationship with time around the new rather than the accumulated, which treats the possession of a long history as a category of irrelevance rather than a form of resource. Abe has lived through things that are now history. The things that are history are what he has to offer. The retirement castle at night is peaceful, the residents sleep, the building is warm in the way that institutional buildings maintain a regulated temperature regardless of the season outside. The specific warmth of a place where people who are old and sometimes cold are kept warm as a provision of care. The sounds of sleep from many rooms. The night staff moving quietly. Abe sleeps. In his sleep, he is possibly in the 1940s, possibly somewhere in the Pacific, possibly in a Springfield that was younger and different, possibly with a wife who was alive then and is not alive now. The dreams of the very old have more to work with than the dreams of the young. The archive is larger. The church, at night, is empty in the formal sense, and full in the way that buildings dedicated to a purpose are full of that purpose even when no one is present to fulfill it. The pews are arranged. The hymn books are in their racks. The particular stillness of a space that is accustomed to being still different from the stillness of an empty house, which still carries the acoustic trace of the activity that has temporarily left it. This is the stillness of a space that has made peace with silence as its default. Ned Flanders has been in this church many mornings and many Sundays and many evenings when something drove him there outside of the regular schedule. He has sat in one of the pews in the middle of the week when no service was scheduled, when the building was empty, and he has sat with whatever he was carrying, in the specific quiet of the place, in the hope or the expectation or the practiced openness of someone who has decided that this is where he comes with the things that are too heavy to carry through the week without being set down somewhere. God has not spoken back. The church at night holds this history. Ned's mornings and Ned's Sundays and the specific quality of his presence in the space, the weight of it, the hope of it, it holds the history of everyone who has come there with something heavy and set it down in the pews and waited. Springfield's commercial district, after the last store's close, has the particular quality of an American Main Street that is still mostly Main Street rather than chain-dominated. The storefronts are dark. The particular character of each storefront is visible in the dark in a way it is not visible during the day, when the activity of the store overlays the character of the building. At night, the building is simply itself. The facade, and the windows, and the specific proportions that were decided decades ago by whoever built the building for whatever its original purpose was. Some of these buildings have been many things. The building that is currently a restaurant was previously a hardware store, and before that something else. The layers of previous use are visible in the architecture to the person who looks for them, the proportions designed for one use, now carrying another, the building accommodating the new use without fully releasing the old. Springfield has this depth. 36 years of episodes have layered the town with uses and events and relationships until the town itself has become stratified, the current surface sitting over accumulated history like topsoil over the deeper geology. And now it is night, and the layers are quiet, and the town is simply what it currently is. All the previous versions of itself present underneath but not asserting themselves, the current version resting in the dark. The gorge, which is outside town but belongs to it, is deep and still in the specific stillness of a geological feature. Geological time is different from human time. The gorge is patient in a way that nothing human can be patient. It has been there long before Springfield and will be there long after. It does not concern itself with the theories that the people above it have assembled about the town and the plant and the couch and the floating timeline. The gorge is simply there, deep, still. The harbor is similarly indifferent to the theories. The water moves because it is water and water moves. The boats sit in it because that is where boats are when no one is sailing them. The lights on the harbor structures reflect in the water, and the reflection moves when the water moves, breaking and reforming, breaking and reforming. The mountains at the edge of Springfield's impossible geography are cold tonight. At their elevation, the air has the specific quality of altitude, thin and clear and very cold. The kind of cold that is clarifying rather than painful, that sharpens the edges of things. The stars are visible from the mountains in a way they are not visible from the town. The light pollution of the town's streets and the plants glow not reaching this high. From the mountains, looking down, Springfield is a cluster of lights. The specific pattern of streets and buildings visible as a distributed illumination, some parts brighter and some parts darker, the power plant's glow concentrated in one area, the residential streets warmer and more scattered light distributed across the rest. From this distance, Springfield looks like every other American town. Like every cluster of lights visible from altitude, the specific geography and the specific history compressed into a pattern of illumination that could be anywhere. But you know which cluster it is. You can find the plant's glow, distinctive at the edge of the cluster. You can orient from the plant to the residential streets and find, approximately, the location of Evergreen Terrace. You cannot see the specific house from here. You know it is there. That is enough. The night is full of things you cannot see but know are there. The couch, the family, the lamp in Lisa's room, maybe still on, maybe finally off, The question not requiring an answer tonight. The plant, humming. The river, moving. The impossible geography of a town that is everywhere and nowhere, that is yours and belongs to everyone, that has been running since 1989 and will be running when you wake up. You are tired. The town is quiet. The night is doing what the night does, which is holding everything in its dark until the morning comes for it. Let it hold you too. You have been in Springfield long enough tonight. You have walked the streets and sat in the bar and stood at the edge of the gorge and watched the harbor and felt the hum of the plant and listened to the saxophone in the yellow room and sat next to Maggie while she watched the ceiling. Light. You have been a resident. You still are. Rest now, resident. The town will keep while you do. Springfield is not going anywhere. It never goes anywhere. That is the point. That has always been the point. Good night. One last circuit of the town. Before the night is fully done, before the last of the waking slips away, walk the town one more time. Not quickly. There is no hurry tonight. There is no deadline on the other side of this walk. The town will be the same at the end of it as it is at the beginning. And the walk itself is the point, the slow passage through familiar streets that is both geography and memory. At once, start at the top of the hill. The plant is here. The cooling towers are here, above you, the plumes rising in whatever light the night has, the tops of the towers disappearing into whatever sky Springfield is currently using. The building itself is more solid at night than it seems during the day. The darkness removes the context that makes it legible as a specific kind of building, leaves it as mass and light, the controlled glow of an industrial facility that never turns fully dark. The road down from the plant runs through the edge of the residential district before it reaches the center of town. The houses here are similar to the houses on Evergreen Terrace, the same generation of construction, the same approximate scale, the same relationship between the house and the lot and the street. The neighborhood of people who work in the plant, who have always worked in the plant, who built their domestic lives within the economic logic of the facility on the hill. The elementary school is visible from the bottom of the hill, the facade catching whatever light there is, the flagpole at attention in the dark. The school is quiet at this hour in a way it is only quiet at this hour, because at all other times it has either children in it or the echo of children, the residual noise of a building that spends most of its life full. Late at night, the echo fades, and the building is simply itself. The town hall sits in the center of the commercial district, among the stores and the businesses, asserting the town's institutional self in the civic architecture that American towns use to make visible their claim to self-governance. Springfield's town government has been the site of many of the show's political comedy episodes, the elections, the civic meetings, the particular theater of local democracy, which is simultaneously more honest and more directly absurd than the national version. But at night, the town hall is just a building. A building that holds the records and the decisions and the history of a town that has been deciding things about itself for as long as it has been a town. Past the town hall, toward the older part of the commercial district. The shops that have been there since before most of the current residents were born, the ones whose facades have accumulated decades of small changes, the sign repainted, the awning replaced, the window display shifted while the essential character of the building remained. These buildings have a weight that newer construction does not have. They have absorbed time in the way that brick and stone absorb it, holding the heat of many summers and the damp of many winters, becoming over decades less of a building and more of a presence. The barber shop is somewhere in this part of town. It is closed. The striped pole has been turned off for the night, the rotating motion stopped, the specific visual rhythm of it absent. The shop smells, from outside, of whatever barbershops smell of through their doors, a specific masculine chemistry of aftershave and hair product and the warm oil of the clipper, a smell that is the same in every barbershop you have ever been in, and that is therefore a smell made of time as much as chemistry, a scent that belongs to decades of this specific kind of space. Further along the street, past the section that the show has used most often, into the parts of town that appear in establishing shots or background plates, the texture of the town that gives the main locations their context. The houses and businesses that exist around the corners of the places the show visits, that are implied by the existence of those places, that are part of the ecology even when they are not part of the story. This is the Springfield that exists between scenes. Every town has it the lived texture that is not the story, the ordinary continuity of a place that is always going on regardless of which part of it is currently being narrated. Springfield's between-scenes life is enormous. 36 years of episodes have taken up a relatively small part of the town's surface. The rest of it has been running continuously in the space the show was not using. The side streets. The blocks between the school and the center of town where no notable episode has ever been set, but where, in the logic of the place, people have always been living. Houses with people in them. Lives happening. The specific texture of a neighborhood that is not the neighborhood the show is about, but that is a neighborhood nonetheless. There are children in Springfield who are not Bart and Lisa and Maggie. There are families in the houses on the side streets who are living the same floating timeline existence as the Simpson family, who are not aging, who are not growing, who are preserved at whatever age they were in 1989. You do not know their names. You do not know their stories. They are part of the town's population in the way that most people in any town are part of the population present, living, existing in the town's social fabric, but not the part of the story that gets told. They are asleep tonight too. All of them, in all the houses, on all the streets, the whole of Springfield's impossible population, arranged in their impossible geography, sleeping the sleep of people who have been awake long enough. The plant hums, the river moves, the cooling towers breathe their plumes into the night sky. The gorge is patient, the harbor is quiet, the mountains are cold, the houses on Evergreen Terrace are dark, the couch is empty. The family is upstairs, or on the couch, or wherever the night has placed each of them, in the specific configurations of their specific rests. And the town holds, as it has always held, as it will always hold. Wherever you are tonight, whatever room, whatever part of the world, whatever hour the clock is showing you, Springfield is with you, the way places you have loved are with you. Portable, permanent, present when you call for it. Call for it whenever you need it. The door is open. The light is on. Come home. Thank you for spending this time in Springfield. If you watched until the end, or slept until the end, both are entirely correct. Springfield will be here. It always is. The full history of one evening on Evergreen Terrace. There is one more thing, one more evening worth narrating, slowly and completely, the kind of evening that the show has depicted 1,000 times in 1,000 variations. The ordinary weeknight evening on Evergreen Terrace, which is the show's most essential canvas and its most honest claim about what life is and what it is worth. Homer comes home. He comes home the way Homer always comes home, through the front door, announcing his arrival by the sound of it rather than by any deliberate announcement. The sound of someone who has been out in the world and is now back inside the specific gravity of his own house and his own family. The sound of arrival. The specific sound of this man in this doorway, which the family inside the house has learned to read the way you learn to read a familiar sound, not consciously, not by thinking about it, but by the body's adjustment, the slight shift in attention that says, he is here. Marge is in the kitchen. She is making dinner, which is a word that covers a range of activities from the very elaborate to the very simple, and tonight it is somewhere in the middle, a meal that will be adequate and that will be served and that will be consumed, and the consumption of it will be the family's shared act of the evening, the thing they do together that is not a conversation but that holds a conversation, that provides the occasion for the talking that would not happen without the table and the food. Homer goes to the kitchen first. He always goes to the kitchen first. The kitchen is where Marge is and where the food is, and these two things, the person he loves most and the substance he loves most, share a space, and this convergence makes the kitchen the first destination. He says something to Marge. She responds. The exchange is the exchange of people who have been having exchanges for long enough that the specific words matter less than the fact of the exchange that they are speaking, that the speaking is easy, that the case for speech is still being made between them after all this time. Lisa is in her room, working on something. The something could be homework, or could be a personal project, something that exists outside the assignment structure, something that she is doing because the doing of it is itself the reward. Lisa frequently has projects of this kind. The school does not produce them. She produces them herself, out of the particular compulsion of a mind that needs material to work with and will find the material regardless of whether anyone provides it. Bart is not where he is supposed to be. This is not a crisis. It is the baseline. Bart not being where he is supposed to be is as natural as any other fact about the evening, as unremarkable as the weather. He is somewhere in the house or in the yard or in the general vicinity of the house, in one of the positions that Bart occupies when he is not explicitly required to be elsewhere. He is fine. He is always fine in this specific sense present in the general area. Unharmed, available to be found when finding becomes necessary. Maggie is in the living room. She is sitting on the floor, which is where Maggie spends much of her time closer to the ground than the rest of the family, in the position of observation that the floor provides, the whole room visible from this vantage point. She has a toy or she does not have a toy. Her hands are occupied or they are not. Her eyes are on the room, specifically on the doorway to the kitchen where Homer and Marge are making the sounds of dinner and conversation. She is listening. Dinner is called. The family assembles in the way that families assemble for meals, which is to say imperfectly and with varying degrees of timeliness, but eventually completely. Bart materializes. Lisa descends from her room, carrying whatever she was thinking about with her, setting it on the table in the form of a specific kind of attention that is not quite present. Homer is already seated, the food in his field of vision. The meal begins. It is a weeknight dinner in the Simpson house. The show has depicted this scene hundreds of times, and each time it has been the same and different. The same family in the same configuration having the same kind of exchange, and the exchanges accumulate into the history of the family, the specific record of all the dinners, all the conversations, all the moments of contact and conflict and boredom and love that have happened around this table. The table is in the kitchen. It is the right size for the family. The chairs are the chairs. The light over the table is the light over the table. The whole arrangement has the settled quality of a domestic space that has been used for a single purpose many times, that has conformed itself to that use, that would look incomplete without the family around it. This is the center of the show, not the plant, not Burns, not the theories and the mysteries and the accumulated strangeness of a town that should not exist. The center of the show is this table, this meal, this family, this specific evening in the life of 5 people who are connected to each other in the way that families are connected, through the combination of choice and circumstance and the ongoing decision to remain. The meal ends. The table is cleared in the imperfect way that this family clears a table, which involves incomplete compliance with the task and eventual achievement of the basic goal of removing the dishes. Bart disappears. Lisa takes her thoughts back to her room. The kitchen is Marge's domain again. Homer migrates to the couch. The migration has the quality of a physical law, something that follows from the fundamental conditions of his existence. After dinner, Homer moves toward the couch. The couch is the evening's destination. It has been the destination since the beginning of the evening. The dinner was a stop on the way to the couch. The couch is where the evening resolves. He sits. The television comes on. The evening settles into its second phase, the quieter and less structured phase. The phase in which the family is no longer formally together but is still in the same space. The sound of the television moving through the house, reaching the rooms where Lisa is reading and Bart is whatever Bart is, reaching even the kitchen where Marge is finishing whatever the kitchen requires. The sound of the television in the evening is one of the show's most persistent ambient facts. The television is almost always on in the Simpson house. It is the sound of the household at rest, the background against which the family's individual activities play out. Not the content of the television. The content changes and is the subject of many episodes in its own right, but the sound of it, the presence of it, the low, continuous voice of the television, there whether anyone is watching or not, present the way the plant's hum is present, the way the river is present, the way familiar things are present. Marge comes to the couch. She sits at her end, which is the end that is hers, the position she has occupied on this couch for 36 years. She brings with her whatever she was doing in the kitchen, or she brings nothing but herself. The couch makes room for her the way it always makes room for her. Homer's awareness of her arrival registers at some level beneath the one that is watching the television. He shifts, slightly, in the unconscious accommodation that comes from many years of sharing a couch. They sit together. The television is on. The house is in its evening configuration. The children are in their rooms or nearby. The kitchen is done for the night. The plant is on the hill. The street is getting quieter. This is the evening. This is all the evening is, in its most essential form. 2 people on a couch, in a house, in a town, At the end of a day, the simplest possible arrangement of the things that make a life. The show is 36 years old. It has been depicting this evening in all its variations for 36 years. The variations are enormous. Everything that has ever happened in every episode is a variation of this evening, an expansion of it, an exaggeration of it, a departure from it that ends, always, by returning to it. The couch is the point. It has always been the point. Everything else, the plant, the fish, the gorge, Burns's medical treatments, the floating timeline, the vote to maintain the fiction, the skeletons in the basement, the saxophone in the yellow room, the watchful silence behind the pacifier. All of it circles. This point, the couch, the two people on it, the evening settling around them. You have been on this couch tonight too. You have been in this room, with this family, for however long you have been watching. The room has included you the way it always includes you, without announcement, without ceremony, simply by being the space that it is and being available to whoever arrives at it. The family is going to be here tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. And in 36 more years, if the show continues to run, which it gives every indication of doing, they will be on the couch. The evening will be settling. The plant will be humming. The river will be moving. The gorge will be patient. And you will be welcome whenever you arrive. That is the deal. That has always been the deal. The show does not end because we do not end it. The family does not age because we do not let them age. The couch is always there because we keep going back to it. We are Springfield. We built it. We maintain it. We are the reason it runs. And tonight, the last thing worth knowing is that the loop you are in, the returning, the watching, the sleeping and waking and returning again, is also a form of love. The most ordinary form. The form that does not announce itself and does not require announcement. The form that is simply presence, simply return, simply the decision to come back to the place and the people that you know and that know you. The couch is there, the family is there, the town is there. Rest.